And let's see, we have Nerdy Rodent, Critical Cripple, and Doc Fearson in the side chat here. Let me do the pop out thing so I can have them both in one window. Ah, shoot. I just hit the wrong thing here.
Uh-oh.
Let me get that back up. That's the problem with Tourette's is that sometimes my fingers wind up hitting the mouse buttons when it's not positioned where I want it.
Oof. Well, I never would have guessed that you had Tourette's because I'm used to people with verbal tics.
Well, I'm in the habit of just hitting the mute button on my microphone whenever I'm not talking, so
Uh,
I keep it from coming across, and that's the headset I have has a physical mute button, so it doesn't show on the screen when I'm muted. It's just got a button in the cord.
let me ask you something. Can you hear me when I mute? Because my microphone speaks when I mute.
Okay, we'll try it. Are you muted now, or?
Oh, I ticked it like 4 times right there, so apparently you can't hear it. That's good.
Well, no, I was hearing, pretty much what you were saying. So try one test and okay. Well, I see the circle around your avatar flashing, but I don't actually hear any words there.
Okay, yeah. No, my mic goes, mic on, mic off. And when I'm streaming with, say, OBS or recording with OBS, it comes through because I don't have all that mixer stuff for OBS.
Yeah.
So it just hears my mic going, mic on, mic off.
Ah. Yeah. For some reason, my account will not let me use OBS, and that's a problem with my YouTube account. It's not a
Mm.
problem with anything else, and unfortunately, it seems unfixable since you can't really get any customer service from YouTube.
Mm.
So I either have to live with it or I have to delete the account and start over.
Wax off.
Yeah, and
Well,
basically, I don't want to lose the name, so I don't really want to switch accounts.
have you thought of try? I mean, have you tried creating a second account just to see if you can get your OBS to work that way? Just to verify that it's not something with your OBS or your computer and not
Well,
necessarily YouTube?
but the way YouTube is set up now,
Mm.
you have to have 100 followers before it'll let you live stream. So I'd
Oh,
have to create an account and get 100 followers just to run the test.
I did not know that.
Yeah, you need to have 100 subs before it'll let you live stream.
Yeah, I didn't know that because I've seen stuff about streaming on my own account, but I think I've only got like 29 follow subscribers.
Yeah.
And how I got there, I don't even know.
Well, and you can tell my account settings are messed up because everything's messed up. It also says I'm eligible for monetization, but I only have
Really?
228 subscribers, and that's not supposed to come until you're over 1,000.
Oh, yeah, well, that's probably some kind of a grandfathered in thing.
No, no, I think
No?
they just messed up the bit settings because actually YouTube deleted my channel twice before I posted my first video.
How does that work?
Good question. They never explain these things. My best guess is they deleted it because somebody complained about comments I was making under other people's videos.
Mm-hmm.
And I've even got a pretty good guess who it was because there was this Muslim guy who was getting pissed off at me basically because I said Muslims do the same things Christians do as far as, thinking their religion is the only true one and so forth.
Yeah. Speaking of YouTube, let me ask you a question. Have you ever had somebody reply to a comment you made 4 years ago? Like just out of the blue, like no, out of nowhere, you've got somebody replying to something you said like 4 or 5 years ago.
Well, I haven't been on that long, but I have had it come up that I've had people reply to comments I made several months ago.
I had someone reply to a comment that I had posted 4 years ago, and I looked at the reply and I looked at what I had said, and I was like, I don't even remember where my head was at that time. How do you expect me to reply 4 years later?
Yeah, nerdy, the problem I'm having with my account is that for some reason the YouTube account will not share the stream key with any of the OBS software. Hi,
Hey,
Doc.
hey, Doc.
Hello. What'd be happening?
Not too
Nothing.
much, just kind of chattering. Don't really have a topic yet. Did you bring one?
Um. I mean, I
Well,
could
how's
think
your
of
life
one.
going in general?
Oh, I don't know.
How are you doing
I
with the
did
car?
Oh,
the the van's pretty good, running good.
You managing the payments? I know you're still kind of needing some help on that.
Yeah, I made the first payment. Uh, I make them on the 15th because that's when I got it. So 15th of last month, and the next one will be coming up. So um,
Okay, so it's gonna be in the middle of every month that you.
yeah, and I managed to get ahead a little. My place of work doesn't give vacations, so they just on your anniversary date they just cut you more money for like a week's pay. They just give you an extra week's pay every year, and it's basically up to you to work out if you want to take any days off. So like I got a little bit of a leg up there,
Well, that helps.
so I'm working on building a savings.
Yeah, I remember that was one of the things when my father died, and the union rep was going over the benefits with my mother. And he had to like check it like four times because he couldn't believe it. But according to the records, he had only missed 6 days of work in 35 years.
Wow.
that's some attendance there.
Yeah, well, he was very dedicated in that, and you know, I mean, there are a lot of things with my father that I had serious issues with, but nobody could fault his work ethic. But he had grown up on a farm, and that was just part of the thing. That got up every morning, milked the cows, fed the chickens, did a whole series of chores before going off to school every day. Come home from school, do the same thing.
Righty.
So yeah, it was not a fun life for him as a kid. I know that, and that was right through the depression.
Crazy.
Yeah.
I didn't used to be very good at attendance and stuff. I used to call in a lot when I was younger, but this job I've been at a year last August, so I've been there a good year and 2 months now, and I have only missed 2 days, and that was last winter, and I still had the Impala, and this we had this wicked blizzard, and the snow was so deep in the street it was higher than the space between the car and the road. So I physically could. I tried, and I didn't get very far. I physically could not drive through it. So, but otherwise, I've had no sick days this first year. So,
That's an interesting thought that I just had is, they you expect people to have, and I'm not knocking people who have a strong work ethic. I like
mhm.
to think that I have a strong work ethic. Um, but you're expected to have a strong work ethic even if a even if a job treats you like shit.
Mhm.
You know, you're working for McDonald's and they don't give you breaks, but they'll give you flack, and people will give you flack for not for missing days, basically. And it's like, well, you treat me like shit. Why should I treat you like you're God's gift to my life?
Yeah, like you
Yeah,
should
well,
be.
and that's one of the things that, you know, people get on the younger generation about work ethic, and that whole thing really has changed of the relationship between the employer and the employee. You know, that
Mm,
in the 60s through 80s, there was actually quite a lot of improvement over that. And, then it really went downhill again.
yeah.
And again, people consider like the 50s this golden era, and a lot of that was brought about by strong unions.
Mm-hmm.
And
And
now
now,
people consider unions like socialist and everybody's against them. And unions are what gave us the 40-hour work week and why most employers gave health benefits.
yep.
Yep.
And now you've got people who've benefited from that, basically like trying to tear down the unions and give all the power back to corporations.
Yeah.
If we lose the unions, I'm sure they'll go back to whatever they were doing before. Endless hours each work week,
Well, it'd
less pay.
probably be more difficult to go back that far, but there's things that they could definitely tweak. Like
Yeah.
there's one of those things that like where um I work for this company that I'm not going to name that owns a lot of stores, and like they're moving to this position where they want to give their cashiers 25 hours a week. It's like nobody can live on 25 hours a week, especially only making like 11 or $12 an hour.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's like in order to get those 24 hours, you have to be available whenever they want you to. So like you can't even have a second job.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty crazy.
Well, and a lot of companies are trying to avoid that because depending on the state you're in, somewhere between 30 and 35 hours a week, they have to start giving you benefits.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what costs the company more than the wages. So they don't want anybody to be working enough hours that they have to start paying health benefits.
Mm-hmm. But it's this idea. It's like, okay, you have a job with me. I'm going to give you $25, 24 hours a week, which is about $250 if you're making around $10. But you have to be available at whenever I want you to come in. So you can't go and find a
Yeah.
second job to help make ends meet because you can't give any other company specific times when you can work
Yeah.
because you have to be available when they want you to be. Otherwise, you won't get those 25 hours.
Yeah, it does pretty much, make it impossible to have anything else.
And my opinion is, it's like if you either need to offer your employees set hours. If you're gonna not give me 40 hours a week, I need set out. You need to give me set hours. Otherwise, if you're going to give me 40 hours a week, then I don't care. I'll be open
Yeah,
whenever you need me to be. But if you're going to give me such a pittance of hours, I need to be able to tell other employers when I can work so that I can make ends meet.
yeah. Nerdy's saying, I mean, if employees do work, I have to pay them. And actually, Nerdy, the trick around that is you list them as subcontractors, and then you have no responsibilities at all. That's usually where I wind up. I'm usually working under some general contractor, and you know, basically, I have to fight with them for everything.
I was gonna say on what Pirate said there. I mean, you're totally right. Um, in fact, I would say that if you're gonna give me chintzy pay and chintzy hours, then me as the employee, I should be the one to make my schedule then, because now I have to organize my free time to do things. So it's like, yeah, you give me shoddy pay, I get to pick my hours. I get to set my schedule.
Right, but
That's what
per
I think.
right, but then you'll end up with and like it's kind of a difficult thing because like I can see it from both points of view. You
Yeah,
give people the option to pick their own hours, and everybody's going to be working in the mornings when they're not needed because there's nobody in the building
but
who needs service.
yeah.
It's like
Well, not
that's
me. Not me. I'd work exclusively evenings or overnight.
right.
Yep.
No, no, I understand there are some people, but like when you're talking about a position like the cashier, for example,
Yeah,
you get to this instance where nobody wants to work in the evenings because that's when there's actual work to be done. You know,
yeah,
there's nobody,
Yep.
there's not a bunch of people shopping at big box stores at 9 in the morning. Because they probably have regular jobs and they're at work at that time. It's 4,
yeah,
5, and 6 in the afternoon when everybody else is getting off of work that they want to be getting off of work.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, it is a something where I've advocated a lot for diversity in the workplace. Really helps the company
Mhm.
because there actually are enough people who are willing to work the night shift. They just tend to be people that are usually perceived as being a little off, so they don't usually hire them.
I guess that's true. Yeah.
The
Well,
other
that's.
thing, the other
Mhm.
thing is that they have a lot of problems getting people to work the religious holidays, and it's like, I was pagan for 25 years, so didn't matter to me if I worked Christmas as long as I had the solstice off. So
Right.
my holiday was over 3, 4 days before the holiday everyone else wouldn't work.
Well, that's one of those things that I think that they could solve quite a bit of problems if they just communicated with the employees a little more.
Yeah,
Like for example, Mother's Day. You know, they'll make people work, and you've got not customers, you've got employees complaining because I have kids. Why can't I have Mother's Day off? And I'm like, well, I don't have kids, so I'll work on Mother's Day, no problem. They could just do something where they say, okay, are you okay working on this holiday? And then schedule people who are okay with working on the holiday, and then go something like reverse seniority to fill the rest of the shifts.
yeah,
yeah. I usually try to volunteer for every holiday I possibly can. It's usually time and a half.
Mm.
yeah. I
although you
usually
although
did too.
usually although usually only certain holidays. Depends on the company. Like the last job I had, I think there was 2 days a year they paid holiday pay. That was like, I think, Fourth of July and Christmas. Everything else was regular pay.
Yeah, the company that I work for doesn't quote unquote give holiday pay. But they do. But they don't.
Well, I often volunteered for holidays, regardless of whether or not there was any pay difference, just because it gave me an excuse not to show up at the family gatherings.
There's that
Yeah.
too. Yeah, I
Well,
always volunteer for holidays regardless as well.
yeah, the way that the place that I work for does it is like, let's just say you've been there a year and you qualify for a week's paid vacation and they pay for 6 holidays. What they'll do is at the beginning of the year they'll give you 6 days of vacation pay that you can
Ah,
use. You can use it whenever you want. Or if you don't use it and a holiday rolls around, they apply it to you for that holiday. So you're getting paid for it. It's just not automatic if you
Yeah.
used it
yeah,
already.
yeah. Kind of like my vacation.
Right.
Well, and then with the way our society has changed, and especially with them shipping all the production and assembly jobs overseas, we really need to reformat things. That the idea of the 40-hour work week, doesn't work and is not going to be enough jobs for the number of people that are in the labor pool anymore.
Hmm. Well,
You know,
and
and
that was.
and I know already that a lot of countries, especially the Scandinavian countries, have gone down to like 30-hour work weeks.
Hmm. Well, that was one of those things. I was talking to somebody. She was complaining because the cashier that was helping her hadn't been very friendly. And I said to her, I said, "Well, imagine if she didn't have to be here." And she kind of cocked her head at me and said, "What do you mean?" I said, "I'm pleasant at work because I enjoy being here. I don't mind my job. I don't mind earning some extra money, earning money.
Mhm.
What if every person that was in this store was here because they wanted to be, not because they have to be, because they have to pay their bills? Can you imagine how much nicer like retail and that would be
Yeah,
if it was people who just wanted a job, they didn't need a job, they didn't have to be there in order to stop from being homeless, but they just wanted to be there because they were bored and they wanted to have a job."
yeah, and like I could not work customer service or direct retail
Mm.
just because I'm not good at putting on the mask. I can't be all pleasant and polite if something's bugging me. It's gonna come out.
Most of my experiences in some kind of retail or service occupation, and I'm like a chronic depressive introvert with social anxiety
Yeah,
and ADD. Um, so it's not like I'm super good at it, even though I've been doing it for decades. But I kind of manage. It's dealing with people, dealing with customers is extremely stressful to me. So I try to avoid it.
yeah. Well, I know your situation there, Doc, and yeah, if you're doing night shift and you're only dealing with a couple of customers a shift, I could
Yep.
probably manage that. The idea that you know probably dealing with 50 or more customers in a day, yeah, that's not
Oh
going to
yeah.
go well. At some point, I'm going to
50,
tell someone what I really think of them, and you can't really do that in that position.
50 or more a day. Oh my goodness, what are you talking about? Like an hour?
Yeah. Well, I know in some, yeah.
I end up working on Thanksgiving a lot of the times. In fact, um, every year actually. Um, I don't work until the evenings though, so but that's when all the
Yeah.
sales start where I work. Um, and I used to be in the electronics department
Oh, hey,
on Black
Orla.
Friday.
Yep,
So
sorry. Didn't mean to
working,
cut you off.
no problem. having to work with a bunch of people. But my thing with working retail has always been my coworkers. The coworkers cause me more trouble and grief than the customers do.
Yeah, that too. Again with the social anxiety, and I don't read people. I have to take everybody at face value, and that goes wrong a lot.
Yeah.
I've
And
always
pretty much the same thing the other way around is that I'm not sending the signals that other people can read clearly, so they're misinterpreting me a lot. Whereas, I pretty much need people to take me at my word because anything else you're trying to read isn't really there.
hmm
Yeah. I'm a little bit that way myself. People tend to misinterpret the things I say in grossly bizarre ways.
Yeah, well, I'm on the autistic spectrum, so for me,
Yeah.
I don't read body language or facial expressions.
Yeah.
And I've been told that my body language is atypical to say the least.
Mhm.
And I just remember my fiance, specific day when it really hit her that she's looking at me just with the shocked look, and she's like, "Your body language says you're lying, but you have absolutely no reason to lie about this."
Right. Yeah.
my
I think I do okay at in general at reading body language. Um, I'm very empathic, so I probably do a lot better subconsciously reading. So I mean that does help me, in my various tasks, but at the same time I'm all scared because it's a human, and they can whirl around and hit you with their talons at any moment. You never know.
Yeah, yeah, that's
my
and
issue.
go ahead.
I said my issue with people is generally just not having a frame of reference to understand understand them. It's like being from two different worlds, because I'm very immersed in internet culture and a very reclusive person, and they're all out there, and this, that, and the other. Like, you remember when Grumpy Cat died?
Yeah,
I was very sad that day because Grumpy Cat died, and I was
yeah,
trying to express it to somebody at work about why I was, because they were like, "You're acting weird." I'm like, "Oh, Grumpy Cat died," and they were like, "What?" And I'm like, "Oh, that's right. You and I are from like two completely different worlds. You don't get me. I don't get you. So I can't commiserate with anybody at work about this poor cat that died."
yeah. Well, I've had that recently because there's been actually a couple of deaths around here about people I didn't even really know, but people I know knew them or were related to them. And it's like, okay, I can't really get upset about a person I never really met. Okay, I feel sorry for the people they were connected to.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's like, yeah, when Cy died, that hit me really, really hard.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I mentioned to people that a friend of mine died, and it's like, oh, you mean an internet friend? And they just brush that off.
Right.
And it's like, okay, I didn't know him that long. I am one of the few people that actually had the privilege of meeting him in person. But, he really was a special guy, and just, I
The
don't get attached to
callousness
people easily.
and the
But he was
callousness with
someone who really
which
put himself out for everyone else.
right, and the callousness with which normies will just dismiss that is
Yeah.
tough to
Well, and
deal with. Yeah.
especially where I'm living now,
Mm-hmm.
If it wasn't for the internet community, I would go months at a time without talking to anyone I'm not related to.
Right.
Because this little town, I have absolutely nothing in common with anyone here.
Well, I mean, I'm in the same boat, and I Jesus
Told you.
fucking Christ, my boyfriend. He's gonna get a kick out of it when I tell him I was on a live stream when he did that.
And you got witnesses.
I forgot what I was saying.
Yeah, well, Orla's saying I feel tolerated at most by people, and yeah, that's pretty much around here. Is that the people in this town put up with me when I have to go out for groceries or that, but I don't really interact with anyone.
Right. Oh, I
Yeah.
was gonna say that doesn't necessarily have to be a small town thing. Like I live in big city Atlanta, and like I don't relate to anybody here.
Yeah,
You
well,
scared the
I had lived in Syracuse, New York, and in a big city, people are more used to that. That most of the people are just anonymous and they go by them without paying much attention to them.
Y'all.
In a small town here, everyone's used to knowing everyone, and it's like they kind of know me because they know my family, so they know I'm part of that clan, but nobody really knows who I am.
I'm kind of in between that because my town is like just under 30,000. Which is not a huge town, but I've lived in smaller towns than this.
Yeah,
I've lived in a town that was probably like a couple hundred people. Um, but you kind of get a little both of that during busy times. There's a whole lot of anonymous people, and I'm sure most of the population of my town doesn't even know I exist. Even though I used to deliver pizza and actually met a lot of people, if briefly, but um, there's a few of them who know me, and I nonetheless try to just keep to myself, do my thing. But I try to act, polite and gracious and positive anymore. I used to really mope around, and I'm sure I still do, but uh, the last several years, I've decided I want to try to be a positive experience to people, even if it's just for a couple seconds of their day, because whenever you have an interaction, it's not just you having this experience. It's like now there's all these people and this and that. Well, each of those people is having the experience too, is encountering other is encountering you as well. So I try to be mindful of people's perspective and try to be a positive experience, which is actually also a good tactic if you're socially awkward, because if you act inhospitable, you'll draw more attention.
yeah, I just I try to go about my business quietly and hope nobody really notices me.
I have a thought about social people who are socially awkward, quote unquote. I don't think they're always socially awkward. They're just trying to interact in the wrong social circles. You know? Like you put me in a room with a bunch of normal people who are talking about normal things, and I'm just like, ooh. But then you put me in a room with people who are gamers and geeks and nerds and video game people, and I'll talk a mile a minute and be in on any conversation I can get into.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. Um, you know, depending on who you're socializing with and what all of your differences are.
Mm-hmm.
um, but I mean, I'm socially awkward even with longtime friends. Um, just being with anybody, just being in the side chat, much less on a stream. I'm all nervous and scared and a little anxious. You know, just being around another person, just knowing another person is there, kind of puts me on alert because humans are scary.
Yep. Well,
Mm-hmm.
also, Kenny, there's a difference. Like you're saying, a group of geeks or that, and it's like there's a big difference if you kind of know there's at least one topic everyone's going to relate to.
Right. Well, I mean, I think that's part of what the whole thing about being socially awkward is that you're afraid of saying the wrong thing. You're afraid of not knowing
Hmm.
what to say.
Yeah.
But, if you're hanging out with people who are into comic books or, the same thing that you're into, it's less like you might be less likely to feel that way because you'll know, hey, if I say something about Batman, these comic book nerds are going to get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
even if they
Right.
don't get it, they can relate and we can like get to common ground that way.
Yeah. When I was like,
Hmm.
when I'm at one of my gaming groups or the Lego group, it's like at least I know there's a topic that I can talk about that everybody's going to get something, and it's like, you know, there's something you can bring up that's not going, well, I can't say not going to offend anyone because even in those things, you'll, get arguments over ridiculous things, like we
Indeed.
fight over Star Wars or Star Trek type things.
Hmm. I'd like to think that that's mostly just a play rivalry.
For most people, it is. For some people, some people are very emotionally invested in those things, especially when you have people who are introverts or on the autistic spectrum,
Mm,
that
that's true.
they can put rather an extreme amount into that as far as, kind of centering the world around it.
Yep.
Mm,
And Nerdy's saying none of this nerd appropriation.
I like comic books back before it was cool.
Yeah, well, I followed the
Oh,
Marvel
I did
comics
too.
like, in the 70s through the 90s. I kind of fell off of them after that. So, yeah, I have a lot of problems with the Marvel Cinematic Universe because the heroes are nothing like the ones from the 80s.
Hmm.
They don't even seem to be related, and
Well, I mean, I think with some of them, like Marvel. Well, actually, DC has a multiverse too, doesn't it?
Yeah,
So, I mean, I don't really.
because they're
I don't.
gearing up for Crisis now. So they
Mhm.
most definitely have
Right.
that.
And so
Hmm.
what I was getting at was like, people complaining, oh, they want to make Peter Parker gay, for example. Okay, there's a multiverse.
There you go.
There's a world somewhere where Peter Parker is gay. This story is set in that universe. It's
And
not the
and
yeah,
same
Mary
Peter Parker you thought it was.
and Mary Jane could be a gay male in
Yeah.
that universe.
What would Mary
yeah.
Jane's
Well, that's the
male
thing
name
that
be? Woo!
making Peter Parker gay, really does change his story a lot.
Quite a bit. Yeah, his love
Because
interests.
quite a lot of his story is centered around his kind of awkward relationship with Mary Jane. And for
Yeah.
the people who remember, even before that, Mary Jane was not his first girlfriend.
Hmm.
Before that, there was Gwen Stace, who he to some degree blames himself for killing her.
Hmm.
Hmm. Right, but the point that I was getting at was It's like there's multiverses. There's many ways to tell the story.
Yeah.
Tell the story using the same character. People are just upset because it's not the character that they want to see, but the story and the character that the creators, the producers want to show. I guess is the word I was looking
Yeah.
for.
Well, part of the
Hmm.
problem I have with Marvel is I always liked them better because they seemed more realistic. That,
Hmm.
although they had superpowers, they were dealing with everyday problems. Peter Parker had to deal with making sure he got his assignments in for school and paid his rent.
Hmm.
But at the same time, the characters all kind of got stuck, and it's like, it's an awkward thing because some characters grew old and died, and some characters never aged.
Hmm.
Yep.
And it would have been a lot easier to handle if all the characters had aged and if maybe a bunch of them we're seeing now would be, like legacies, like the offspring of the characters from the 80s.
Hmm.
That would make it a lot easier for the universe to seem consistent.
Oh, right. Yeah, because they're actually set in modern times, but they're characters from the 70s. Yeah, I see what you mean.
Yeah,
Hmm.
Yeah,
that,
actually,
yeah,
actually
if
do
they
them
were
in the time
characters
they were
now who
made.
grew up with the cell phones and the technology,
Hmm.
it would make things fit better. That, yeah, you're not going to have someone in their 20s or 30s that has some of these outdated attitudes.
Hmm.
Y'all.
I don't know. I just never understood the mentality for folks that were like, this isn't what they did in the comic, and I'm like, I don't want to see the same thing.
Yeah,
If
Yeah.
it's like people complaining about differences in movies, like The Hunger Games, for example. It's like I've already read the book. I've already seen, quote unquote, seen that story. I want to be somewhat surprised and have things unexpected happen in the movie.
yeah, and I get what you're saying, and like with the Harry Potter movies, I was able to do that.
Hmm.
That I was able to watch the Harry Potter movies and consider it that, yeah, this is the same story, but being told from a different perspective. So there were some inconsistencies, but yeah, that's going to happen.
Oh yeah, because weren't the Harry Potter movie books were told from Harry's perspective, and it's really difficult to do a movie from the perspective of one of the characters like that,
Yeah,
unless they're narrating it, and then you're
Yeah.
basically being told everything instead of shown it.
yeah. Well, in particular, like the second Harry Potter movie really seemed to make more sense if rather than from Harry's perspective, if you thought of it as being told from the perspective of the Weasley twins, it
Mm.
actually seemed to fit more.
Oh, it's been so long I can't even remember.
Yeah. Well, just, as far as when he got the invisibility cloak and the Marauders map and that.
Mhm. So why is it that nobody ever realized? Because maybe this is a complete tangent, but the Marauders map showed the locations of people. Why didn't it show? And it showed the positions of people, even if they were polymorphed or
Yeah.
anamorphed or whatever the heck it was. Why is it that nobody ever looked at the map and realized that Wormtail was there? Because the map would have showed him.
Yeah, well, and why would there only be one of these? That if a student at the school had made this,
What
why
might be
couldn't one of the
make 30?
why couldn't one of the professors have made one of these maps and given it to Filch to keep track of the students?
Mm-hmm. Well, because I think the part with that one is that you had to swear an oath over the map in order to appear on the map. Was that something, or am I just misremembering?
Well, in order to read the map, yeah, it showed up as a blank parchment if you didn't say the incantation.
Right, but if you can't see the map, maybe you're not on the map unless you can see the map. Hmm. That's a thought.
Yeah,
Like you say the incantation, and you can then see the map, but that also puts you on the map.
yeah. I had a bit of headcanon with Filch myself.
Mm-hmm.
That they said he was a squib,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's not that he couldn't do magic at all. I think he was just not very competent with it.
Kind of like Hagrid.
Well, and yeah, and I think his cat, Mrs. Norris,
Mm-hmm.
may have originally been his girlfriend, and he turned her into a cat, and nobody could turn her back. So since then, he has decided he would never use magic again.
Hmm. Interesting thought.
That's just my little headcanon for it.
Well, before they put Guardians of the Galaxy actually into the movies, there was this headcanon that I had floating around where the Guardians of the Galaxy movie was actually a D&D game being played by the Avengers.
That could be cool.
Let me see if I think I saved the image on my desktop on my computer.
I
Wrong
wasn't aware
button.
of that part of it, but again, there was a Guardians of the Galaxy back in the 80s, but it was completely different characters.
Oh yeah,
And
the
it
original.
actually was a group of, that each character was from a different world.
Yeah, you most of them from human colonies in our solar system,
Yeah,
and they were all pretty much of a species that was genetically altered to live on those planets. So Charlie 27 was from one of the Jovian moons, and it was like a high gravity place or whatever.
yep,
So that's why he's all big and broad. Martin X was from a race adapted to Pluto, was it? I
yeah.
think.
I don't really remember them all that well. I just,
Yeah.
I can kind of picture the
Oh,
characters
I'm
in my head.
yeah,
I don't even remember their various
and they're all
powers at
the
this point.
yeah, and they're all the last survivors. Yondu was an Alpha Centaurian, so um, they might have been supposedly another species, uh, like a completely alien to human species.
Yeah,
Um, and he, the the red fin was not a mohawk. It was like a dorsal fin that started pretty much at the forehead and ended or went down dude's back, I think.
yep,
And it was made of compressed hair follicles. So it was essentially hair just all pressed the way it grows on them. It's all pressed together into a fin. And like anytime people like it's like considered a weird point of shame in his culture. Anytime anybody asks him about his fin, he's like, "We don't talk about
hmm
it."
So I
It's like,
found oh I
um,
found my image, but you can finish your story. I'll listen.
yeah.
Interesting.
Incidentally, I'm going to interrupt myself. Incidentally, I'm happy to announce that Headcanon is my new porn name.
Okay. Do you have a link on Pornhub now?
I should get one.
Well,
so
Bad Tempered Badger keeps saying he's got a Pornhub page. I haven't actually tried to look it up.
so I found this image, right? And it shows Steve, and he's standing there, and he says, "My character's name is Rocket. He's a genetically enhanced raccoon with a gun fetish, and he's giving side eye to what appears to be Natasha, and Natasha's just glaring at him." And it says, "The Guardians of the Galaxy is really the Avengers playing a tabletop role playing game where Bucky's the DM who suffers through heaps and loads of trolling, mostly from Steve, especially from Steve. which means that Natasha was the one who sat down and wrote out the long, comprehensive backstory for her kick-ass space assassin Gamora that Bucky keeps trying to work into the campaign, but they keep getting sidetracked by Tony, who just created what he sees himself as, the suave, wisecracking space vagabond. Thor, who
Huh?
needed a yeah, so Star Lord would be
Mm-hmm.
Tony. And then it says Thor, who needs a lot of help building his character and decided on a couple easy to remember traits. Strong, honor, doesn't get metaphors. And then it said, and Bruce, who's actually too busy to pay full attention. So anytime Bucky asks what he wants to do, he just says, I am Groot, and lets Steve decide.
Okay, I can see how that fits.
But
Of course,
then, of course, they screwed it up by actually having the Guardians in the Avengers movie, which means it can't be true.
yeah.
Yep.
Well, again, with multiple universes, they can do crossovers like that. But
Right.
but yeah, part of why I can't get into New Guardians of the Galaxy is Rocket Raccoon really freaks me out. The idea
the
of
movie
something that
version,
has
or
the idea of something that has human intelligence and the ethics of a
Right.
raccoon is scary as
Mhm.
fuck if you've ever dealt with wild raccoons.
But I've heard tame raccoons are pretty cool. But I don't know. I've never actually seen one.
I've had to chase wild raccoons out of the house because they realized that they could come in through the cat door and get the cat food.
Yeah, we had that problem. We used to keep our cat food bowls right next to the back door, and we would leave the back door open, and they would come in occasionally. And one day we were sitting at the kitchen table while this raccoon decided to do it. So we're all sitting at the table. We just look, and that's not a cat. And the cat's sitting under the table, haunched up, hissing, spiked fur and everything. And my dad looks at him and goes, "He's stealing your food. Go get him." And then the cat hisses and runs the other way.
The cat was smart.
Yeah, no, we honestly wouldn't have wanted to have him do that.
Well, and unfortunately, the raccoons will team up on larger animals, and 4 or 5 of them can take down a medium-sized dog. So
Yeah.
they can and will eat cats and dogs.
Mm.
they're vicious critters.
Yeah, everybody thinks they're cute, but you get up close and
Well,
and it's like I'm not down on them. They're just being their natural selves.
Hmm. Just
But
surviving.
yeah, but they're dangerous varmints to have around.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
and that's the thing. Like, I can conceptually understand that, but still think that they're adorable.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
totally agree
and
with
then
that. I was gonna say they are cute, vicious, brutal, but still cute.
I put a link in the side chat here for a video, and it's basically raccoon trying to make friends.
Yeah, well, and raccoons will be friendly as long as there's a lot of food.
Right.
But with a raccoon, you always have to keep in mind that if the food runs low, as far as they're concerned, your food.
Hmm.
Yeah, most anything alive is food, potentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they're scavengers. They will eat anything.
Desperate enough animal gets a hold of you.
Did you hear there was a Did you hear there was a shooting at a German mosque?
No,
A mosque, not a mosque. Synagogue is the word I was looking for. Oof.
was that what just today or yesterday or?
Uh, it was today. Last updated at 1:51.
Yeah, no, I don't really watch news on a regular basis.
I
It
had it
just
pulled up because I was like, well, if we need something to talk about, there's a news site.
So, what information do they have? Is it how many people
Two,
were shot
two,
or what?
two dead, several injured at a mosque. So, I'm sorry, I keep saying mosque. A German synagogue on Yom Kippur. Let's see. I'm trying to.
Yeah,
So of
well,
course the obvious question that comes to mind is was do it a neo-Nazi or something, or just a guy who had a beef with Jews?
Says linked to far right. Shooting motivated by far right ideology is the
okay.
title.
So,
All
what
right,
happened to the shooter? Did they arrest him or did he shoot himself or what?
Suspect has been arrested.
Okay,
Two
so they
people
have
were
someone
killed
in
in a
custody
shooting.
to
Mhm.
question.
Yep. It says two people were killed in a shooting near a synagogue and a nearby kebab shop in the eastern German town of Haley. That's how I want to pronounce it. Halle. This one suspect has been arrested. So not not terribly high. Never mind. I don't want to say it like that. It's like all things considered, only two people dead is actually pretty quote unquote good, but not good. You know what I
all
mean?
right.
Yeah.
Well, compared to what happens in America,
Right.
like every other week,
Mm-hmm. And then
Well, you say every other week, but
that's like every week or a couple
yeah,
times a week.
unfortunately, um, we were averaging more than a shooting a day. They just weren't reporting them anymore.
hmm
Jesus,
That the last I heard, there had been over 260 mass shootings in the U.S. this year.
yeah, that's almost one a day. Or you
Well,
mean so far? So we're not.
and I heard that like a month ago, so I don't know how many there've been since then.
so
But that was
mhm.
defining a mass shooting as an incident that involved more than 4 or 5 people getting shot.
You guys are familiar with Stefan Molyneux,
Yeah.
or as I call him, Stephen Moldy Nuts.
Yeah.
He, he's got shit takes, right? Apparently, he said all aspects of personality are influenced by genetics. And somebody went back through his profile to find him saying both my parents were institutionalized.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
So you know what he's saying about himself in that instance.
Well, he did say influenced, and that's actually kind of true.
But he says all
Influenced, yeah,
aspects.
yeah.
So if
I
that's
don't know.
true, what
I don't think we have enough data to say that unilaterally, but I mean,
right,
it's something that makes a sort of sense. Like biology influences our behavior quite a bit, not just our genetics. Like
right, but
this.
here's the question. If 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 what he's saying is legitimate and he says that let me pull it back up so I can quote accurately. All aspects of our personality are influenced by genetics. What part of our never mind. Well, basically I was going to say like if you've got straight parents and they have a gay son, well, how does that work then? He's basically
Well,
saying that
well, but
you're mm,
homosexuality isn't hereditary
right.
necessarily,
That's what I'm saying.
right?
He's saying
But
all
but they're
aspects of personality are influenced by genetics.
right. But there are genetic and other biological things that happen that kind of determines your sexuality.
Oh, maybe I was misinterpreting what I was reading. Then it
Hey,
was no.
Tria.
Hey.
Actually, to put one positive note as far as the mass shootings, over the summer, the chain Dick's Sporting Goods had said they were going to stop selling automatic weapons and high capacity clips. And there was a story this week that the company destroyed over $5 million worth of
Ooh.
inventory
Okay. See
because
now
they were
that's
items that they would not sell anymore and they did not want them getting out on the streets.
Oh wow.
That's that's noteworthy. I,
Yeah,
Like
Yeah.
I'm not into sporting stuff, but if I were, that would automatically
yeah,
make me want to be a Dick's customer.
yeah, definitely. And they are still selling hunting rifles and such.
Yeah, but I
But
mean,
yeah,
especially where I live, they have their uses. I mean, it only takes you like half an hour to get to hunting grounds from where I live. And I used to live in an area where, like, during hunting season, they told us to wear vests because
yeah,
we lived on hunting ground essentially. Like,
mm,
you were
yeah.
basically allowed to shoot a deer in your backyard. Like,
Yeah, well,
there were no laws saying, "Hey, you can't shoot a deer." Basically, if you had a gun license, it was, a deer came in your yard, it was yours. Good hunting.
where I live, it is currently bow and musket season. The actual rifle season won't start until November. But literally, you can, as long as you're outside the city limits, that's really the only regulation here. And the entire city is only a radius of about 3 miles.
Wow.
Hmm.
it's like
Um,
I know some places have said like they're like Walmart, for example. They stopped selling assault rifles, semi-automatic stuff a while back, but they still sold the ammo. After this last shooting in their own store, they said they were going to stop selling certain calibers that could be used in those kinds of weapons, even though so they don't sell the weapons, but they still sell the ammo. But they said we're just going to sell out of our current stock, and that would be it. So Dick's went one step above that and actually destroyed stock.
Yeah, yeah, and one store doing it probably is not going to make a huge difference. But, their spokesman said that if this saves one life, isn't it worth it?
Hmm.
yeah.
So it was nice to see a corporation actually take that kind of position.
Hmm.
And who knows? Maybe it does mean that one or two people who would have gone off on a shooting rampage are going to have more difficulty getting the weapon now.
Well, I wonder if that becomes popular. If and it's the wrong reason to do it, but if it helps, oh well. But I'm wondering if Dick's becomes more popular for doing that, if other companies might jump on board with doing that as well.
Yeah. Well, also, if the company is willing to do that, it means there's one less company that's lobbying against gun control laws.
Hmm.
Yeah, lobbying is the big problem. It like I don't necessarily disagree with the concept of lobbying because otherwise certain marginalized groups would not get any representation at all. But I do think
Agreed.
that having money involved is the issue. It should not money any money or trading of favors needs to be illegal.
Yeah, well, the
Because
corporate lobbying is the problem. The
yeah,
corporations that have just, these huge amounts of resources that no private group could ever hope to match.
yeah.
How is that legal anyway? Lobbying and
Because
stuff and paying, and I mean it's literally bribery.
yeah.
Because they don't technically when when you think of bribery, you think somebody sneaking into an office opening a briefcase of money, right? That's the picture a
Yeah.
lot of people get. What they're doing is they're doing things like, "Oh, hey, I'm going to go to Tahiti for a week. Why don't you come with me and hear my
Mhm.
pitch while we're in Tahiti? Oh, don't worry about that. I'll
Oh,
I'll take care of your food while we're there. It's a business meeting."
Yeah. Well,
That
I
kind of
thought
what
thing.
they
I
often
thought
do is they organize these things that, they bill as them being conferences, and they get a bunch of the representatives to go to these conferences, which is like, maybe they may have a 1 hour presentation and then they spend a week at a golf course.
Yeah, see, that's more along the lines of what I was thinking lobbying was, you know, the interested parties send their lobbyists, their representatives, actually to a government building and have some meeting with, I guess I thought it was all more official than that. But then, there's people whose like occupation is lobbyist.
Yeah,
They get up on the news and they're like, occupation lobbyist.
yeah,
So it's like saying a professional briber
Well, and that's
of
the thing. Not
your
everybody
world
who's a
leaders.
lobbyist, not everybody who's a lobbyist behaves like that.
Right, but they put it up there like it's any other job, like fireman or gas station attendant, lobbyist. Like it's just a job.
yeah,
Well, for the ones that are doing it the legitimate way, like going and pleading their case to people without bribing and doing all this extra stuff, it is.
The
It's
problem is they don't get very far in our current system.
right.
yeah,
Because I say this as somebody who is a caregiver and who knows the people in her area who are actively working to get laws changed. They know they'll never be elected. They know they can't do the job of being elected, but they're always at a lawmaker's door somewhere trying to get things better for disabled people. Or there's LGBTQ plus groups in my area that do a little bit of lobbying. Not
yeah,
all lobbying is bad. It's just the way our system is set up is it's too easy for corrupt individuals to make bank off of lobbying and being in Congress.
Hmm.
yeah. Well, and unfortunately, especially at the federal level, a lot of the congressional representatives, they can get literally 10 times as much money from lobbyists as what their salary is.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like at this point, what they're being paid is inconsequential next to what private organizations are giving them. And most of these private organizations, that they have like nondescript names, like Advancing American Family or whatever you want, but then they wind up being backed by either religious groups or major corporations.
Well, of course, because if they had a religious name in their name, people wouldn't back them quite so easily.
Well, they want to avoid the religious connotation because that would make some of the representatives shy away from them, if they happen to represent a district that isn't primarily that religion.
Yeah. Even though the whole family values thing is completely based on Christian ideals. Like,
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. When they say family values, it's a vague enough or broad enough term, but they
yeah.
mean Christian
yeah.
values. It's
Well,
it's kind of passive aggressive.
The Mormons do kind of the same thing. The problem is that most religious groups don't have quite the amount of funding that the Mormons do.
Yeah,
well,
And
but
then
the evangelical Christians, as a block, tend to have
have way
quite a
more
lot of
people.
power.
Yeah. Um,
and the Vatican probably is a little bit wealthier than the Mormons, aren't they?
yeah, the Vatican definitely has more power and influence. The thing is that people kind of underestimate Mormonism because it isn't a huge religion, but it's not a small one either. I don't they
Yeah,
do really good PR and they're really good at being under the radar. People don't realize that a lot of times when marriage equality comes up and a state is close to like passing it, the Mormon Church will actually funnel money into to propaganda against it, and also encourage church members to go door to door preaching against it.
Yeah, and
I
quite
So,
honestly, until I got on the internet and actually met a few ex-Mormons, I did not realize how large or widespread the Mormon Church was.
they do that on purpose.
You know,
Everybody
that's
thinks,
I largely thought it was, like limited pretty much to, yeah, they had control in Utah and they had a couple of scattered groups across the country, but particularly
I
finding out, like how much power they have like down in Florida and some of the southern states.
oh yeah, the Mormon Church, and I think they're doing it more quietly now, but the Mormon Church asked for permits a couple of years ago to change one of its cattle ranches into a mega city that could host 500,000 people. And there was a big to do about that. I don't know whether or not they dropped the project or if they're just doing it more quietly now because it got them bad publicity.
I had heard something about that project, and I don't know. I'm not really up on it, but I had the impression that they were still going ahead with the plan. They were just trying to keep it, below the radar.
Yeah, because it's bad publicity. They're not keeping the promise that they made, which was to keep that particular parcel of land environmentally friendly. And the thing is that the Mormon Church hates bad publicity.
Yeah, well,
And they're really good at it, which is why people don't realize just how much influence the Mormon Church has. I believe I remember in the Kavanaugh hearings, I think 4 of the senators involved had a Mormon background. I'll have to double check that, but I know it was a decent amount. Because there are, I believe right now, there are at least 6 or 7 people in Congress who have a Mormon background, and keep in mind that unless they are a Jackmo, which is somebody who's like in the church, but it's more like they're not super serious about it, but they're definitely still Mormon. At least the way the church operates is if the prophet calls you and suggests that you should do something a certain way, you do it. You don't question or ask. So that's kind of some scary stuff as far as I'm concerned.
Isn't there some famous sports person that's Mormon, but she like it's a she. I know this much. I think it's like one of the like tennis player.
I'm not sure. I'm not really into sports all that much. I do remember Steve Young, because I believe he's actually an actual descendant of Brigham Young, and he was Mormon. So there's kind of a worshiping of an idolizing of church leadership and their families. They say that they don't, but President Nelson, the top leader of the church and their prophet, is holding rallies in sports arenas.
Oh, Serena Williams, but she's a Jehovah's Witness. But you notice she does a lot of things that Jehovah's Witnesses could be like disfellowshipped and whatnot for.
Yeah, Mormons
Same
have
as
something similar where it's like people who they can use for good PR get different rules than the plebs do.
right. That's what I was basically trying to bring in was this idea that a run of the mill Mormon or a run of the mill Jehovah's Witness can't get away with dick, but you put somebody in a position where they're famous and they'll bend over backwards to let them be a good representative
Mm-hmm.
of the religion.
A
Well,
good
and to be fair to Mormons, I think most groups do that. If
Oh yeah.
somebody who's famous, declares that they're part of the group, they'll use it for whatever PR they can, regardless of how much things that person does that they don't approve of.
I think the aggravation is how extreme things are when you break the rules in Mormonism. Most punishments in Mormonism are either extremely public or get you completely thrown out. And then
Mm-hmm.
basically, it's when you get excommunicated, there's like a whole lot of things that happen to you. You lose friendships, your family tries to keep you around, but they also turn on you in a sense. Like
Yeah,
it's not as extreme as Jehovah Witnesses because they're not even supposed to accept your existence in Jehovah Witness, but in Mormonism, like you get discredited. Like imagine being around people all the time that you love and you know they love you, but they don't believe a word you say.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was
It's
watching. Who was it? I think it was a John Cedars thing where he was. What was John? I get so confused trying to keep track of who's what religion. What was their religion
mm-hmm.
sometimes,
John
but
Cedars was
ex
Jehovah's
just
Witness.
Witness, right? And he was interviewing somebody who was who had faded, and he told one guy he was going to go to tell his children, and while he was there getting ready to tell his kids, his daughter, um, somebody approached him, and he trusted the guy, told the guy, and then the guy went and told his daughter before he could talk to his daughter, and then his daughter wouldn't even acknowledge him, wouldn't even speak to him after that point. So he never even got to
Oof.
express himself to his child because of this
Ooh.
slimy person.
yeah, and
Ouch.
Yeah.
yeah, the shunning, effectively, they're like holding your family hostage.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Oh yeah. In my case, I specifically left instructions through Quit Mormon for none of my family to be notified. And I had already told because I knew that they were going to tell my family regardless. But I was hoping that like I would tell my family, then I would get the notification that hey, your bishop has your papers or you're out or something like that. And the bishop in my area, what other denominations call a pastor, the bishop in my area called my dad into the office and asked if he knew that I was leaving the church, said that he had the paperwork.
Hmm.
And while I'm glad that I got the confirmation that the bishop actually had the paperwork, I was pissed because I didn't know that he had it. And if I had, I would have told my dad, even as strained as our relationship is over this. My whole thing was I wasn't trying to hide, and it made it look like I was trying to hide. I was just waiting to tell my dad myself. Like, I didn't see bringing it up again unless I knew for certain what was going on. And so that kind of pissed me off a little bit.
Yep.
But the Mormons,
Yeah.
if you leave the Mormon church, your family will be notified.
So what can
Even
I ask? What's this with paperwork? I've seen this posted a couple times, and I'm just run of the mill average ex Christian.
okay,
Nothing. And the idea that you have to have paperwork of some kind is like I said, I'm not Christian. I'm not Christian. What's this with the paperwork?
okay.
Nobody ever explains it.
There's a few background things that I've got to tell you before the paperwork itself actually makes sense.
Buzz to you
Hello,
too.
hi
Yeah, the
Orla.
hi.
Hello.
The buzzing is mine because of the notifications from the Twitter app.
Oh, okay, no problem. I just as long as you know what it is. Um, but anyway, the Mormon Church is centralized. You know when you say something like Southern Baptist, there is a Southern Baptist conference where a lot of people kind of generally agree on like what they're going to teach as a Southern Baptist and what the codes are.
Hmm.
But you don't expect these people to go out and say you have to do it this way and every every Southern Baptist church answers to us, and you're going to do it the way we say, and you're going to give us all of your money, and then we'll send it back to you however much we think you deserve. Mormon church is extremely centralized.
God.
Every congregation answers in some way, either directly or indirectly, to the prophet. Period. Then when tithes and offerings and everything are taken, they're sent to Salt Lake City, and Salt Lake City sends a percentage back to you. Also, every church member has a file about them, and that file moves with you when you move locations.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's
you.
a big difference that the Mormons and the Jehovah's Witnesses, have a much tighter hierarchy structure, that it all winds up going back to one central location, even more so than the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because I was just going to say, doesn't the Catholic Church do the same thing with the donations and stuff too?
It does,
I thought
but
you
here's
send
the
a
thing.
percentage, not the other way around.
The Catholic Church just says you're Catholic no matter what. They prefer for your butt to be on a seat, but they don't really care. The Mormon Church will track your ass down.
Right, yeah.
They have people that they have paid, they have on their payroll to sit on the internet and figure out where missing membership is.
Wow.
When you move, they figure out where you've moved to. They haven't heard from you in a while, and they really want you back for whatever reason. Local leadership will figure out where you're at. Your file will be moved once they figure out where you're at, whether you like it or not. And your file includes everything notable about you. So if you did a major sin in the past and you went through the repentance process, they keep up with that. If they figure out that you're gay, there is a mark that they put on your file that you are gay. They can figure out where you're at within a day of you moving into a new place.
Yeah.
Because
that's creepy.
It is extremely creepy.
It is creepy, and except for a loophole, it would violate stalking laws in most states.
And
but
the loophole
they have is that you originally gave them the information.
Yeah, that you gave them permission by being baptized. But they don't tell you that you gave permission when you said you wanted to be baptized. If I had known this at 8 years old, I probably would have been squeaked out.
How can you? You're not.
Well, yeah, that's the question I have. That if they're getting permission from a minor, how is that a legal contract?
Parental consent as well, maybe? Can they tie it into something like that?
It must be something like that. I don't understand the legalities there.
Sounds like something they would use.
That's all it is. It's a church with money. It has enough money to make people happy to look the other way. Now, the process. In other churches, if you just stop showing up, sometimes they'll send somebody out to check on you, but after a while, if you don't show up, they kind of get the hint. Like, I did go to a Southern Baptist church for a while. It's right around the corner. And they did send people out to, make sure that the reason I wasn't showing up was because I wasn't hurt or anything.
Yeah.
Right, that's logical. If you've been there every Sunday and then suddenly you don't show up, hey.
Yeah.
Well, that's what tends to happen with the Catholic Church, is that they'll maybe send somebody around once or twice a month for 3 or 4 months, and if you still don't show up, then they give up on you. They still count you on the rolls as long as you've got a baptism certificate, but they won't keep bugging you. But
the thing is that in other churches, generally what you do is you do a phone call where you say, hey, I'm not really a member anymore. I don't really want to show up. And they'll generally ask for a reason why, because they want to know if it's something that they can fix. I'm at outs with somebody. Well, maybe we can mediate, or oh, we're sorry you felt ignored. We can work on that. Which again, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. You know, if somebody wants to make improvements and make things better, that's always a good thing. But with the Mormon Church, you can't just call your bishop and be like, "Hey, I'm out." Legally, the United States says that once you've told your bishop in writing that you're out, they cannot put you up for church disciplinary action, but they doesn't mean that they can't take their precious time getting you out of the church. It took me nearly 9 months for me to get my name completely off the rolls.
Mm-hmm.
I had to send a form of ID. I had to have my letter written a certain way. I went to a lawyer service because I didn't want people contacting my family or me over it, because bishops are trained to find any loophole they can to not let you go. If you word that letter somewhat incorrectly, they're like, oh, well, you know, it must be a faith crisis. We can fix it with, if, you know, or, oh, you just got offended, or, oh, you've got some sin that you feel like you can't repent of. And some people send their stuff to the bishop and it goes through smooth. They're done in a couple of weeks. Other people have had to deal with bishops who won't acknowledge that they received the letter and just throw it in the garbage bin. And there's no way to prove that the bishop actually got it. And so they're just in this whole rigmarole of, you know, like getting the process done. Now, if you go through Quit Mormon, which is the lawyer service I went through, you have to send in a notarized ID and a notarized letter that you want out.
That's
And
crazy.
it's because, yeah, it's difficult to get out of the Mormon Church. And for most people, they don't really care about whether or not their names are on the rolls. And I'm not somebody who thinks that you have to do it to be an ex-Mormon or to leave the church. A lot of people are in areas where there aren't a lot of other Mormons, so they're not really spending a lot of time trying to reel them back in, or they don't mind people knocking on their door. They don't really care. They'd rather the person be sitting there talking with them, wasting their time with that person instead of trying to preach at somebody else.
Yeah.
I mean, there's family issues and you just don't want to deal with the family fallouts. I can completely understand. Like, there's reasons for doing it, reasons for not. My family is talking about moving from an area where I've lived practically my entire life to another area. And I didn't want, most people don't even really want to talk to me in the Mormon church here. They don't like me. They didn't like my mom. They don't like me. I don't want to move to an area where, oh no, where it's like, oh, we have a new person who's inactive. We need to make them the new project.
Right. That makes sense. You don't want them coming at your door and yada yada.
Yeah. Now, my dad at some point is going to slip and say that he's got a daughter that doesn't go to church, because that's basic talk.
Mm-hmm.
But if I get contact from the church that is not, like, I live with my Mormon family. I am very open about this. If
Yeah.
somebody comes and knocks on the door and says they want to talk to my dad or my sister, this is their house too. They can talk to my dad or my sister. But if I think that they are here at my house to talk to me, or if they ask for me, it's going to be like, no, I ordered a lawyer service for a reason. And if I get contacted through official means by the church, or if you are trying to get through and I can tell you are, I will be contacting said lawyer service, because he is trying to pick up as many stories as he can so that he can do a lawsuit against the church.
Oh, nice.
So you may want to not do that. Like, you're not going to get sued, but I don't think your church would be very happy. So maybe lay off.
Yeah,
But
it must be a pretty awkward situation for you, with your sister and your father still being in the church.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
it is, but I mean, there are strains, but we're still doing pretty good. So,
Well, that's good.
Yeah,
but
well,
yeah, people don't come by because they don't. My mom had a kind of a reputation. She could be sweet and charming when she wanted to be, but if she felt like she wasn't getting listened to, the bear would come out. And people used to think, oh, she's so sweet and quiet, unlike her mother. And I'm like, you have no clue. Like, I've since gotten a reputation for being like contentious like my mother, and so they pretty much stay away.
Yeah, everyone has a beast within.
Yeah, but my mom was pretty loud. They didn't like it very much.
Can I just take a minute and say, hi, honey?
Hi.
Hello, Orla. Nice to meet you. Also, nice to meet you too. Try. It's the first time we've spoken in streams.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
I
we've
know.
interacted in chats. Orla, you're starting to join people's streams now. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. I worry about my stutter a bit.
Oh,
Just a little bit.
oh, I wouldn't worry about it.
I stutter and stammer all over the place.
Yeah. Well,
I like to a lot.
Yeah. Me going honey is a poke at Neil.
Oh, okay.
well, your voice is very pretty, and don't worry about the stutter.
Yeah, I just generally have my mic muted whenever I'm not talking. Otherwise, people would be hearing a lot of strange stuff.
Yeah, I'm glad they can't hear me chewing on my headphones. That would be awkward.
Oh,
Yeah. Well, that's the headphones I have a button on them for muting it, so nobody can tell on the screen when I'm muted.
I kind of miss having an easy to locate mute button. Like, I usually press the 3 or 4 of the wrong buttons before I hit the mute on this one.
I wish that they had a setting so that I could. I mean, I like using the mute button that's on my headphones. Sometimes it's hard to find in a rush. It would be nice if they had a setting where I could make the mute for StreamYard a pressable button. But I don't see settings in it. Never mind. It might actually be under that button. It says settings right in the middle of my screen.
Well, also for your StreamYards, don't you have a toolbar on the bottom that should have a mute button on it?
I have that on the app.
Phone.
Yeah, I don't know if you're dealing with it with the phone. I only do it from my desktop.
Mine does on the phone. It has audio, video, flip, chat, leave.
Right, but the issue is trying to get back to that button before I sneeze over somebody in chat, for example.
Uh-huh.
Like I'm saying, like I use push to talk on a lot of things. It would be nice to have an option like that for this. If anybody from StreamYards is listening, a toggle button.
You mean like a button on your keyboard assigned to it?
Right, so that like if I suddenly realize, like if my boyfriend starts talking, I can tap the button and be like, "Leave me alone! I'm on a live stream," or something like that.
Yeah, a lot of people have heard me yell at my cat lately because I don't have time to press. Like, I have to find which button it is over here, or I'm not a very fast clicker. I can find a button on the keyboard very fast, but usually people hear me yelling at my cat in the background. Stuff like, stop eating plastic. Don't be an asshole. What the hell are you doing?
Well,
Much more conversation.
just before you guys came in, we were talking, and my boyfriend had come home from work, and my desk is right next to a window, and he heard me talking, walked up to the window, and banged on it, and scared the crap out of me on live stream, and he so enjoyed that. I was like, I was on a stream, and he was like, good.
I
Ass.
do wonder if animals genuinely experience sadistic satisfaction.
Mine does.
Like my nephew had a pair of cats. if if he didn't change their litter box, and they didn't like pooping where there's poop. They didn't like stepping where there's poop. And if he didn't change the litter box, they would find his laundry and go in there.
Oh,
And
that was on
and some
purpose.
yeah, and somehow managed to like even roll it up in there so he doesn't always see it.
I had
Actually, Sloth Girl's cat does that. That if she tries to bury something and hits any clumps in the litter box, she'll give up using the litter box and she'll, yeah, go for a pile of dirty clothes or just use the bath mat.
at least you can see that coming. I had a ferret. He passed away earlier September. But
Oh.
he felt his litter box was the floor under my feet. Like, I'd be sitting here at the chair with my feet up on the roller casters, kind of propped up a little bit, and then I'd put my foot down and be like, oh shit. And I'm being literal because I've just stepped in ferret
Yeah.
poop.
Well, as far as cats being, sadistic or vindictive, when I moved in with my fiance, one of her cats, had a bad previous home that anytime her human had gotten a new boyfriend, she got neglected.
Aw.
So she was convinced men were bad news, and she spent 2 years trying to drive me away.
Oh.
So she made a point of doing it basically wherever it had a stronger smell of me. So it would always be the places where I would walk more than she would. So I'd always step into it. And to give you an idea of the level it got into, that when I left my jeans on the floor at night, she actually crapped inside my jeans and then refolded them so that I did not see it.
Oh.
Yeah.
And I was not aware of it until I went to, put my leg in there and found out that, yes, the leg of my jeans was full of cat shit.
Oh my
Oh,
god.
man.
So
Damn.
there was no question this was a very deliberate act to piss me off.
I want to say I agree with you, but at the same time, it's territory marking, and probably didn't really have anything to do with your gender. Just the fact that there was a strange scent and it doesn't go here.
Oh,
It's my
oh
spot.
no.
Well,
Oh
no,
no.
I
Some cats
think you're
do
right
not
about.
some cats do not like
Yeah.
men. My cat does not like men. He will accept any female any female around. He'll accept other male cats.
Mhm.
But human males other than my dad are shit to him, and he will try to attack.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, and you're saying it's smell, and men and women definitely smell different. The different hormones and different pheromones. When I lived in St. Paul, we had a chow that I used to joke about her being allergic to testosterone because I was, other than me, if any man tried to enter the house, she went ballistic and would not stop barking. The only male that she allowed in the house was one friend of ours who was, and I don't mean this in any derogatory sense, but the most flaming queer you have ever seen. And the only woman she ever had problems with coming in was a totally butch dyke. So I really feel that it was anyone who she could smell too much testosterone, she was not going to tolerate them being in the house.
I think, based
Okay.
on what I know of,
Oh,
It's sorry, it's my daughter.
oh no, it's fine. It's just
okay.
surprising.
I like it. You can't hear them at the minute. Let me just put the earphones.
Oh,
Hi.
Hello.
hi.
Hello.
This is my mom. Her favorite color's black, and my name is Holly. Perhaps. Perhaps. Don't you know your name? Well, the spell Holly is Holly. Okay. Okay. You're gonna say goodbye then.
Uh,
Say goodbye.
Aw.
I had a friend.
I'm so lucky that I have a house. All right. That's enough. Right, I want to say goodbye. Say goodbye then. Goodbye.
bye bye.
Bye.
Sorry, there's never any way to have a phone call with a child around and them not say hello.
Yep.
That's fair.
I sometimes miss having kids, but I am kind of glad I've reached the point that I don't have any I'm responsible for anymore. The youngest of my wards is in college now.
That one was my youngest.
I used to do a lot of voice chat with a friend who had a young one around that age, and we were in voice chat. It was her and me and another mutual friend, and we're just having this conversation. And suddenly her daughter starts talking to her, and she's trying to get on the mic, and her mom's like, "No, I'm talking to people," and she goes, "But he's my friend too. I want to say hi." So finally, she relented and let her get on the mic and say hello to their friend. But it's just cute.
Yep, that's adorable.
She came in asking for sweets because she's just finished dinner, and it's like, yeah, okay, go on. And then asking me what I'm doing.
Yeah, the only thing you have to be careful about is that, kids have a tendency to dox you.
Or themselves.
Mm.
Oh,
I
God.
am a kid-free zone. Like, I don't mind hanging out with kids, and I can actually handle like taking care of them for a few hours, and be just fine. But like a 24/7 responsibility thing,
Oh no.
not my jam.
Well, I
Not
mean,
my
for all
jam.
you take on taking care of your sister is quite a load.
Like even that though, like she's an adult, so I don't have to worry about like what morals am I going to teach her. Like I
Yeah.
don't have to teach her like how to dress herself or anything like
Oh,
that.
no, it's certainly
But
not the same thing. I'm just saying that you've got a lot of responsibility there.
yeah, like the other night she had a problem at 2:30 when I was already ready for bed, and so I had to stay up 2 more hours taking care of her. And I was like, I can do this sometimes because I love her, but doing this like for 18 years 24/7, I do not have. I don't have the moral fortitude for that.
Well, it kind of surprises you. I didn't really think I would either, but I wound up in a series of relationships where kids were, part of the package in every case. 4 relationships in a row came with children.
Yeah, I see. Here's the thing: I doubt very seriously I'm going to get in another relationship anytime real soon. And any relationship I do get in, the likelihood of their children at least being teenagers or already grown is pretty high.
Yeah.
So, especially because I tend to date older versus younger. But I, like, I can't date a person that has a bunch of kids that are little. Like, I can't handle that. So
Yeah, at this point, I think it's unlikely I'd get into that again because, just at my age, I doubt I'll be dating anyone who's under 40.
I tend to date 15 years older than me. So that would put somebody in the 40s. 10 to 15 years older, that tends to put somebody in the 40s. And some people have young kids at 40, but it's not nearly as common. A lot of and if they do, it's going to be, like the last one.
Yeah.
But like, at the same token, that person has to accept that, hey, if you're dating me, the one I've got's never going to grow up completely. And that scares them even more than like having children in the first place, because
Yeah.
the idea is you're supposed to get rid of them at 18.
Nah, not all the time.
With Hufflepuff, she's going to be living under my roof for the rest of her life, and if she's not, we're going to be living on the same property. Like, she's part of the package.
Yep.
And there are certain situations where I am always going to have to help her, and the other person would just have to deal with that.
I did just turn 45.
You're long distance, Doc. I don't do long distance either.
It's a little bit far for me to travel. I'm in north central Iowa, so there's no way for me to get there short of some sort of quantum singularity.
Yeah, like if teleportation devices were a thing, and that's another thing. I've gotten to a point where I can't do long distance anymore because it's even more aggravating to be in a relationship but not get all of the physical affection, because even though I'm ace and I don't like sex, I do like the hugging and the cuddles and the snuggling and stuff.
Yeah, I was so sad that I missed that last stream that Lavender did.
Yeah,
because
I was sad too.
Because like you guys said so much stuff, and I was like, oh, I can't say anything. I'm not there. Because like, especially when you guys started talking about sex positive versus sex neutral versus sex negative aces, and I was like, oh, I could have commented on that because I'm like in that area.
Which particular stream was that? She's been doing quite a lot of them lately.
The coffee with Lavender, where she was talking about the genital preference and stuff. It's like last Sunday.
Okay.
Yep, just last Sunday.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a couple of hers that it's like I was listening to as I was falling asleep, so I didn't hear the whole thing.
I normally don't recommend people go back and watch streams because I know that all of us like probably have like quite the backlog, but that one was actually a good one, and I'm not just saying it because I was in it.
Yeah, no, I did. I actually went and watched it since I had wanted to be on.
It is pretty hard for me to find the time, especially when it's a stream that was 2 or 3 hours long, for me to find the time to even listen through the whole thing. But I agree. I've said many times that cuddling is actually more intimate than sex. I don't have a problem with casual sex, but as far as like snuggling up on the couch and watching a movie, that's a more emotional level.
Yeah, and for me, dating is just so many layers of complication. Like, I said on Lavender Lady's stream, and I'm not kidding when I say this, I have a tendency to lose attraction for the other person, which is which I'm used to it. I know how it works and how it happens.
Okay, Tria, can you
But
repeat
our
that? You froze
society
on me for
pushes
a moment.
um, that I lose attraction to the other person at some point in the relationship, and sometimes it doesn't come back. And for me, I understand how that works, and I understand like what the change is, but other people tend not to get it and take it really, and I understand why they
Negatively.
do. They take it really badly when it happens, and it's like, no, I love you, I desire you as a partner still. It's just those attractions don't stay. You don't have to do anything. There's no work you have to do. I'm going to love you regardless. I'm still going to want the same things. It's just that spark that everybody says that you have to keep going, that just dies for me at some point. And it is really, really, and I understand some people, most people can't handle that. I get that. I totally do. I don't blame anybody for being like, no, I can't handle that. And that is an added complication. At some point, I stopped caring about the romantic things in the relationship. I'll do them happily for the other person, but at some point, my desires turn into I want a friendship that's kind of got exclusive elements to it. And it's just that, and my sister, and being asexual, and like being atheist, because let's face it, you know,
Yeah.
America is an extremely Christian country. Like, all of those complications make it hard.
Well, I get what you mean about, some things can fade away over time. And that's another thing I've pretty much advocated all my life was the idea of marriage being a lifetime commitment. Doesn't really seem to work when you consider the divorce rate.
Yeah,
So
well,
I
here's
think a marriage contract should be something more like, 3 to 5 years with options to renew.
Right, like it's called a marriage license, and you have to renew your driver's license. Why not a marriage why not renew
Yeah.
your
yeah.
marriage
And
license?
and actually I believe that ironically this would probably lower the divorce rate if people realize that if they really wanted to stay in it, they actually have to work for it because on a
Yeah.
given date, the other person could walk away without all the
Well,
complications.
the thing is that it's not so much of a fade as it is like a drop off a steep cliff.
Ah,
Like, it's sudden, it comes out of nowhere. There's no way for me to tell when it's going to happen. It generally happens right after the honeymoon phase, which the honeymoon phase can last a while depending on who you're with.
Hmm.
But it just suddenly drops out of nowhere, and then I'm like, okay, like, I want a more platonic relationship once the novelty is worn off, and it comes out of nowhere. And I think that's part of the problem, is I can't even tell the person that it's going to happen, except going into the relationship and they're like, oh, no, or they either don't understand what I'm telling them, or they think that they'll be the exception because we love each other so much. And
it
it's
just
like, I have been in a relationship where things turned platonic and both of us were essentially happy. It was just he had to move and he didn't do long distance, and I don't either. And
Hmm.
that's the only reason why we turned platonic pretty quick.
yeah, I don't know. It just seems like, when you read the romance novels, and you see the movies, and you see them still so in love after 20 years, and I'm like, that's got to be exhausting to maintain.
Yeah,
It just doesn't
yeah,
seem it. I I envy people that get to that point where the point where my boyfriend and I are at, where we're just like, we're fine just being in the same room with each other. We don't have to be all lovey-dovey and all over each other all the time for him to know that I love him, and
mhm.
for me to know that he loves me. Well, yeah. And it's like, you, oh god damn it, get off of me,
Cat.
Yeah.
boyfriend.
Same
Same difference.
He loves to do that when I'm saying something. His joy in life is embarrassing me when I'm speaking to other people.
Aww.
Are you sure he's not a cat?
No tail. So
Well, they have hairless cats. They probably have tailless cats too.
have you? No, they do. They're called bobtails, but they've got a little nub. But that's slightly off topic. And now I've been distracted and can't remember what I was saying.
I'm so sorry. I
Yeah,
did not
we
help with the situation.
we're saying about relationships fading and about
Yeah,
people
it's
staying in
just
love over 20 years.
it's just you get to the point where just being in the same room with each other is enough, without all that extra effort that people seem to have to put in to a relationship to keep it all, roaring fire versus burning coals.
Yeah, and the thing is that, like, people expect it to stay roaring fire, and I think they expect it to stay roaring fire for longer than it does with me. Because, like I said, that change, that shift comes pretty suddenly for me. And it's like, it's not that my love necessarily for them changes or my want for them necessarily changes. It's more of the attraction just goes bye bye.
Mhm.
And like for me, that's normal. I don't think twice about it. It doesn't really bug me. I'm like, this for me, that doesn't change how the relationship functions or whether or not I want you. It's just like
Well,
that's not there anymore.
yeah, see, for me, and this kind of goes back to the thing I was saying about, the casual things, the cuddling and that being more intimate. That, like, with my fiance after 5 years, it's like the really intimate moments were things like, you know, sitting there watching a documentary and she'd just play with my hair, and that was really the most intimate times that, really kept us bonded together and, kept the emotional level in the relationship.
Yeah, I'm kind of aromantic-ish. Um, I don't fall in love romantically with the person until I've been friends with them for a really long time.
Wouldn't that be more demisexual? Like you don't get attracted to people until you
No,
get to know them.
demisexual is different than
Oh,
no. My sexuality is different than my romance.
I'm sorry. I said
Yeah,
sexual,
Mhm.
and
well,
that wasn't what I meant to
I
say.
have also
Yeah,
heard people refer to, being demi-romantic as well as demisexual.
but here's the thing: I'm not just demi-romantic. I'm also frey-romantic.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I'm not just demi-romantic. I'm also frey-romantic. It takes
Frey?
me 7 years ish or so to develop the romantic feelings, but once I've been in the relationship for a little bit, and usually this is a matter of months, all of a sudden those romantic attractions just drop out of the sky. That's
Gotcha.
Okay,
why I say
Frey,
I'm more
Frey is a
gray.
new term for me, so can you define that?
Same. I've never heard that one before.
Okay, so imagine that um, being asexual is one side of a spectrum,
Hmm.
and being allosexual, everybody who's not on the asexual spectrum, as being on the other side.
Hmm.
Gray is in the middle.
Hmm.
Gray usually refers to somebody who doesn't want to go into micro labels or
Oh,
into or even know why they have sexual attraction, because I'm in the camp of I had sexual attraction to somebody once
okay,
and
Gray. I was
I
mishearing you.
yeah, and I still
Oh, yeah. I thought you said fray, like F
no,
R
I
A
did say
Y.
fray.
Oh,
I did
okay.
say
Okay,
fray. Fray
Okay.
is like a fraying knot.
yeah,
Like all of a sudden at some point your feelings kind of fray away,
okay,
Gotcha.
like and untangle and unknot themselves.
right.
um it's a lot of and you can use fray for romantic and sexual attractions.
Hmm.
um fray romantic refers to somebody who, for some reason, at some point, their romantic attraction just like disappears for no apparent reason other than it just does.
Sorry.
Well, I think that can happen to a lot of people, though, can't it? Even
It can,
non-ace people.
but it's so sharp and sudden and just like you guys are talking about it like fading. It's not
Yeah.
a fade. It's like flipping off a light switch. All of a sudden, you don't have a romantic attraction anymore. Just boom, gone. It's sudden, sharp, drops off a cliff. Like it's not a fade. It's one day I wake up and I'm romantically attracted. The next day, I'm not romantically attracted. Don't know why, and it never comes back.
Gotcha.
That's the difference. It's not a fade out. It is just all of a sudden it's not there anymore for no apparent reason.
Yeah, it's just the sun cut out.
Yeah. And it is just as shocking for that person who for whom they are fray
Yeah.
as it is their partner.
Well, I can see that would be extremely difficult for anyone.
Yeah.
To have that happen so suddenly.
Yeah, it comes out of nowhere usually. And that's why I say, and for me it's usually around 3 to 6 months, but I've had it happen as late into a relationship as a year to a year and a half.
Well, and I can imagine, like, being the person on the other side, like being your partner. And if that happened that suddenly, I'd be wondering, what did I do wrong?
Mm-hmm. And that's why I say I understand the other side of that. And I understand that not everybody can handle that. It's just another complication in the big pile that I have.
Yeah, it'd be very difficult for somebody to not take that personally if they don't really understand you.
Yeah.
And the thing is that usually it happens before that person has really had a lot of a chance of actually getting to understand how that works. Because I did say earlier that I do have a tendency to fall for best friends.
Mm-hmm.
Just because they're my friend doesn't mean that they understand how I work, because being a friend is a totally different experience than having to deal with me as somebody that they're dating. And I realize that I am a complicated mess.
Yeah, and that is something that I can see, even if we had known each other as friends and you had explained that, when it actually happens, it would still be difficult to take.
Yeah. And I don't expect anybody to take that. I don't expect it's like, oh, you have to deal with it, because if you can't handle that, then that's fine. I realize that's difficult to deal with. I don't know what it feels like, obviously, but I know it's difficult to deal with. I don't ask people to deal with that.
Yeah.
I just don't. So it's, like I said, all of those complications, and sometimes I wonder if my desire for having a lifetime companion is actually still just leftovers from being told that was something that I needed. Because half the time, I'm not even really interested in looking. So, well, actually, more than half the time, I'm not interested in looking.
Yeah, and I think that actually is kind of a good segue into something I'm curious about and been thinking about lately, and that's the idea of fidelity. Staying loyal to one partner, for a long period of time. And now, of course, I was raised religious, uh, so I definitely have that sort of thing ingrained in me, and that's the direction my feelings go. Uh, if if I thought it was possible for me to have a romantic relationship, I'd be looking for a long term, monogamous relationship,
Hmm.
and that's how my feelings go. That's pretty much how I was raised. But when I, you know, detach my emotions and try to look at it more objectively, I wonder if there's really even a use for fidelity and if it's even a good thing. You
Um,
know, there's
it
a
depends
there's
on
all
which.
kinds of well, and there's all
Yeah.
kinds of ownership implicit in the whole thing. You know,
Well, and that also
my
depends on
husband,
who
my
you
wife.
ask too.
Yeah,
Um, because some people I think are built personality wise to be in a monogamous relationship, and some people are built to be in more polyamorous relationships. I know people who would never be happy in any form of polyamory. I'm probably one of them.
Hello,
Just
nice
never
to
be
meet you.
happy. And then there are some where if you told them that they had
Oh,
to stick to one partner for the rest of their life, they would be incredibly unhappy.
Here.
And so there's different rules.
Yeah.
And the thing is that for me, my definition of cheating is if you have agreed to a certain set of rules in
yeah,
your relationship and you go outside the bounds of those rules with another person without discussing it first with your
yep,
partner in a healthy, non coercive manner,
yep, and
then
make sure
you
everybody
fucked up.
fully understands.
Yeah. That's
Yes.
pretty
Make sure
much what
there's
I was going to
no
say. That,
ambiguity. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that I could never be in a monogamous relationship, and I make that clear to anyone, before I get involved in anything. And that's, yeah, we have to sit down and we have to discuss, okay, what are you comfortable with and what can I handle? So, yeah, you have to establish the rules and guidelines. And, as far as fidelity, I don't think it's necessarily, being strictly with one person. It's a matter of, honoring the guidelines or the rules that you've agreed to.
Mhm.
mhm.
right.
Yeah,
But
because
but traditional. I guess I'm more talking about the monogamy aspect there, but the more traditional monogamous relationship, yeah. But I basically question on I don't know if we want to call it a philosophical level or just intellectual level. The point of it all. Why should a person be bound to a single person their whole life? And what if your feelings change over time?
Well, see,
A
and
lot.
me, one thing I don't see is people don't look at the opposite side of that. The idea of a monogamous relationship scares the hell out of me because this means there is a person who is expecting me to be everything for them for the rest of their life and handle all of their needs all alone.
yeah,
And I'm not signing up for
even
that kind of workload.
and see, here's the thing. I personally dislike how we put romance onto kind of a pedestal. Like this person is supposed to be everything you need. I'm sorry,
Right.
but my friendships are going to meet those other needs. Like because of Mormon baggage, I can't do polyamory. Um, but like whomever is with me is going to understand. I'm like, look, I want you and I to be devoted to each other about 3-4 days out of the week. The other 3 days, I'm going off with my girls.
Yeah.
Great.
You are
That's
not
that.
you are not supposed to be my entire emotional support. Don't expect me to be your entire emotional support. I will be with you at the end of the day,
Hmm.
and I will be with you whenever you need me. And we're doing certain specific life altering events together. But I do not expect you to be my entire emotional support. Don't expect me to either.
Well, and I think that's much healthier because also, what happens in the situation if you're both in crisis at the same time and you don't have anyone else to turn to for emotional support?
Mm-hmm.
Well, and there's also the dependency thing. Uh, People really tend to specialize, so they tend to depend on their partner for a lot of different things. And especially economically, it can be difficult. So you depend on your partner to help you with certain bills, and then of course you have different skill sets. So one partner might be more responsible about keeping up the house, and the other might be more responsible for keeping the vehicles going. and uh, and then when either a separation or a death occurs, and and you're alone, now all of a sudden you've lost someone that took care of things for you. So there's something to be said, I think, practically, for just not becoming so dependent on your partner for things.
The problem
You
is
should
right
learn to
now
do as much as you
financially.
can on your own.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
problem is,
financially, it's extremely
yeah,
difficult. Yeah,
especially
Yeah,
right now.
yeah.
that's one of those things I don't get. Like if you follow anybody like the Transformed Wife or
Ugh.
anyone of that ilk, where they're like, you should be a homemaker. It's like, bitch, how the fuck can you afford to do that? Excuse me.
Yeah.
I just swore a lot. I'm sorry.
Well, and when my fiance died, it that was one of the problems it ran into, that without her income, I could not afford the house we were living in any longer. And I literally wound up homeless for a couple of months.
I just don't understand how these people
That Yeah,
have
for a
7 or
couple of
8
months I was
kids.
just living in my truck and sleeping in a friend's garage occasionally.
Mm.
Um, in some cases, depending on your situation, you can get help from your church, or
Well,
she
right.
may be a minister's wife.
Hmm.
She gives off the minister's
Wife
wife
vibe, yeah.
vibe. And if he's got enough income coming in from running a church, she also makes money off of what she does. I do believe
Mhm.
she sells products on her website and books.
Right. But I don't
So
think that I
she
don't think
technically works.
well, I
She's
mean
just
that's
doing it in a way that, see, men
mhm.
in the patriarchy don't mind if a woman makes money as long as that
She's so
money
many
is telling other women to accept the patriarchy.
right.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. Like I don't think that there's an issue. I mean, because she's not advocating. Well, I don't follow her that closely, but it doesn't seem like she's advocating don't you can't make money. But what she's saying is you can't make money outside the home. So she's making money and got a career that allows her to stay home and take care of the house and raise the kids. And it's writing books and making crafts. Oh well, that's not gonna rock the boat too much.
Yeah, but the
Yeah.
thing is telling everybody that they
Right.
should be doing it that way is the
Hmm.
problem.
Right.
Well,
Right.
and that's the same thing with Girl Define, that
Hmm.
it's very hypocritical. They obviously were born into fairly nice homes. They're obviously making a considerable amount, between YouTube and their books and their personal appearances. And they're making a lot of money telling other women that they should not do what they are doing.
Right.
Hmm. Again, it's okay to make money telling other women. It's okay to make money in the patriarchy as long as you're telling other women that they need to be following the patriarchy.
Yeah. But you were saying about, them staying at home and taking care of the kids. And it's like, they're not even doing that if they're touring the country doing these speaking engagements.
They're
Well, Girl
newly
Defined
married,
doesn't
but they
have
don't
kids.
have children yet. Like, I don't. They don't have children yet. I wonder what's going to happen when they do get children. Because I don't think either of them have kids.
No, not yet.
One of them just recently got married, like within the past 6 to 8 months. And that's why they were focusing so much on saving sex for marriage, was because the poor woman was like, I'm ready to get down. And she's like, but I can't do it till I get married to my hubby. And you could see as they got closer and closer, her getting more and more horny.
Yeah. Well, and also it apparently there's a third sister that did a couple of videos, so it looks like possibly it's the plan to bring her into it more.
Mm-hmm.
That, once the one has kids, that the other sister may be taking on more of that.
Yeah, I'd like to see how it plays out when they have children. Although, I kind of wish that they would wake up before they had children. Like, I don't wish them to not have children because that's a devastating thing. But just like, wake up before they have children and be like, you know what? I really don't want to teach my children these values. But that's not going to happen, unfortunately, I don't think.
Hey, Bub.
Yep, Bub is here.
Hello, bub.
Hey, bub. But yeah, let's see, I'm trying to think. Paul and Morgan. Morgan's basically allowed to do ministry because she's doing it with her husband. Which, even by their standards, I believe that they are Pentecostal, is like one hell of a stretch for them.
Well, wasn't she also, I mean, and I don't care. This is not me, like, shaming her for it, but instead calling out the hypocrisy. But she preaches save sex till marriage, too. But she wasn't married. She wasn't a virgin when she got married either, as far as I know. From Paula Morgan? Or was it the tattoo? And they've got tattoos, too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the
So
thing is
it's
that
do as I say, not as I did.
yeah. Well,
Yeah, she
sometimes do
certainly
as I
does a
say,
lot
not
of
as I
cherry picking
did.
about.
Sometimes do as I say, not as I did isn't hypocritical, but from them it is because they're
Right.
like making money off of it. Like,
Right, like it's not hypocritical to say do what I say, not what I did, when you're explaining why what you did was actually harmful.
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, it's a difference, like Nakasuchi,
mhm,
says that, yeah, he was in prison and, you know, he's talking about it now and saying that, yeah, these are things he should not have been doing.
mhm,
That's a totally different thing that, he's realized his mistakes and he's being responsible now, taking care of his daughter and everything.
mhm,
yeah, stuff like that heavy chain smoker telling you not to smoke. I mean,
right.
dude, that's
Well,
not hypocritical. That's, hey, I'm hacking up a lung here. I'd rather you kind of, just not have the pain of that. Thanks.
right.
Well, and that's an excellent example because I credit my brother with the fact that I never smoked. Because for some reason, as scattered as my younger memories are, I distinctly remember when I was 15 and he was on leave from the Navy. And we were standing in the hallway of my parents' house and he was lighting up a cigarette. And he looked at me and he said, "Don't ever start these things, you can't get rid of them." And I swear that is the reason I never smoked.
Yeah. Let's
Well,
see,
I
I'm
don't
trying
I
to
don't
think.
necessarily agree with the you can never get rid of them part, but in general, yeah, that's good advice.
Yeah, but
But it's like,
just for him to be so serious about that warning,
mhm,
that it was like the conversation was dead stop and right in the middle of it, he thought that was such a critical point to make.
mhm. Well, like I said, it's one thing when you're saying like, "Hey, I'm doing this thing because I'm addicted to it. I can't get off of it, and I don't want you in this position." And another one to be like, "Having gay sex is bad, and then I'm going to sneak off and go have gay sex with people, but I don't want you to do that." Sh- Shut up from the peanut gallery. But you get my drift.
I am
Yeah.
imagining your boyfriend as a cat. I'm sorry. I just am at this point. Yeah, no, there's other women's ministries that I've come across. Um, One of the things that always kind of concerned me was, and then you have women's ministries that look like they're being run by the woman, but they're actually being spearheaded and financed and controlled by a guy. Those are scary too. Um, I believe that happens in. I know that happens in Mormonism. I suspect it happens in Jehovah Witness. Um, just these ministries that just look like women are running it and they're not. That happens as well, and
Yeah.
that's some scary shit.
Yeah. Tree, I'd like to comment on what you put in the side chat there about, that the next verse being about the one that says disabled people aren't welcome. And that's, when what put me off of being Christian was when I was 14, I decided to read the Bible cover to cover. And I remember distinctly that particular passage where it was saying that, no one who was disabled could enter the temple.
Mm-hmm.
And I found reading that to be really very traumatic and thinking that, what the hell kind of God is this that the people who would most need his help are forbidden from his presence?
Yeah.
And that was really one of the key things that put me off being a Christian.
Well, I used to think that the level of ableism that I dealt with was strictly a Mormon thing, because the Mormons have their own kind of spin on disability, and I can't really go into stories because they're not really mine to tell, but the area that we lived in was extremely ableist towards my sister and my family. There
It's
horror stories. And I thought that maybe it was just Mormon teachings, and like everything in Mormonism, it's basically Christianity with its own spin, or toxic Christianity that's been taken to an extreme.
it's really not just a Mormon thing. I mean,
Oh
my
no,
mom.
I know it's not, but they had their own. There were some things that were specifically Mormon, but very Mormon, that
Yeah.
would not have happened anywhere else. But then I started reading, like, I got caught wind of that particular Bible passage. And then I also talked with some friends who had left other churches, and they were like, no, the ableism is everywhere.
Yeah.
But they were like, but holy shit, y'all got an extreme case of it.
Well, I was born in the Catholic Church, but when I was 14 and reading the Bible, I was going to a Methodist church. And especially Deuteronomy and Leviticus, I found so disturbing that I had several sessions with the church's senior pastor. And basically, all he ever told me was to focus more on the New Testament, and just, yeah, the conclusion I got from that was, well, all the unpleasant parts, we're just going to pretend those never happened.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it's like I couldn't deal with that level of denial and still feel I could follow the religion.
Yeah. Our family went through special kinds of hell, trying to deal with church matters. My mom got in trouble a lot at church. She was called into the principal's office, so as it were, multiple times in her life, because her attitude was, you're not going to treat either of my daughters, like shit. You are not going to harm either of my daughters. And if you expect me to shut up about it, you got another thing coming.
That's good though.
Yeah. But she was not well liked at church because of it. Because you are not allowed to be contentious. You are not allowed to be aggressive. If you start being aggressive or loud or vocal, um, you pretty much get kind of ostracized. But basically, what happened with my mom was they kept lying to her to get stuff that they wanted done for Hufflepuff. And then they would basically say, well, we want this done, only tell her a part of the truth, then whatever they wanted done would get done. And then they'd throw in all of the conditions and terms for it.
Just so that I'm clear, Hufflepuff is what you're calling your sister, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay.
I've slipped and said her name in a couple of streams, but I try not to say her name because there are certain things that I talk about that I don't tell her stories, but I know she wouldn't approve of my online activities. So I try to keep her real name out of it. Like
Right,
I don't.
and that's
Oh
respectable,
no,
understandable as well.
yeah, that's just being responsible. That she didn't consent to this. You don't want to bring her into it any more than you have to.
Yeah, like there are horror stories where I'm like trying to figure out how my dad like keeps going and puts up with this bullshit. No physical harm ever, but a lot of manipulating and lying.
Right.
Well, actually, no, she did almost come to physical harm once because of their. Yeah, she did. Yeah, I don't know how my parents kept going. I honestly don't.
See, the more I interact with a lot of the folks in the community, makes me really grateful for my path out, because the horror stories and the things that some people had to put up with, and I'm just over here going, I just said I wasn't Christian anymore and nobody cared. You
I
know,
wish it were like that for everybody. To be honest.
I do too. Like I didn't have one of these. I didn't have one of these large things where it was like something in Christianity just went, oh nope, can't do it anymore. I just I kind of said some things don't make sense, and then I said the thing for me was that, 18, 19 years old. I said, it does not make sense to me that almost everything in nature is male and female, and yet we have one singular male god. And so that was the start of it. And I ended up going Wiccan for a while. But, and no offense to anybody who's pagan, but trying to be Wiccan felt to me like role playing. And I know that that's a claim that's leveraged against a lot of pagans, is that they're just LARPing. But that's what it actually felt like to me. And I'm like, this isn't for me. And so it went on and eventually became an atheist.
Well, I was pagan for about 25 years. And yeah, actually, a lot of that was I did run into a lot of what I felt was role playing. And I kept thinking that, okay, maybe this is only certain paths or certain traditions, and there's got to be one that's more sincere about it. So I explored quite a few different traditions, and yeah, just after 25 years of realizing that, yeah, none of them really had, anything substantially significant to them.
For
You
you.
know, yeah,
I
that
think for you is the important part to add, because there are people who have had experiences that legitimately convinces them
well,
that's fine.
and I will say that I still have experiences. I had experiences that I still lack any good explanation for. Unfortunately, they're things that I can't get to repeat, so there's no way I can study them. So I'm still open to certain elements of it, but, nothing had any real evidence, and I didn't find anything that really helped me when I was, like, in crisis modes.
Hmm.
Yeah, I had my Wiccan phase as well. Uh, I don't know exactly how long until I sit and figure it out. I can't remember exactly what year it was. when I finally decided to give it all up, but I did phase out of it slowly. Um, Looking back, I didn't think about it then this way then because I kind of believed. I mostly wanted to believe, but I guess I'd have to say I most definitely thought of it as a role playing game because I was a solitary eclectic mostly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, me
Yeah,
I
too.
most of
did
I
the time
never
I did was
formally joined any
solitary,
groups.
and
I
I
did
think that would make an effect. Like being with other people makes you feel less like you're pretending. I think.
Hey, bub.
Hey, Bob.
yeah.
Hey, where are we going?
I don't know. I
Well,
mean, there's people that take it way too far and just
yeah.
ignore, anything that's mildly related to science. Like, no, it's because this happened. It's like, no, it was a magical experience. Shut up.
Yeah, well, and there certainly, there were people who were very sincere about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was kind of peripherally involved with a group called CUPS, which was
Mm-hmm.
a Coven of Unitarian Universalist Pagans. And yeah, the people who were running that group were very serious about it, and it was, well, universal Unitarist in the name. It was kind of a non-denominational pagan group, so it was pretty much a mix of people of different traditions.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I actually was with a coven, he said in quotes, for a little while, but that was kind of a farce and another weird tale. But mostly I was a solitary eclectic, and I couldn't decide on a pantheon. I liked all of the more common ones. I liked the Greco-Roman. I loved the Norse and the Egyptian and the Celtic, and I loved it all. So I said fuck it and started making my own. So yeah, I kind of treated it like a role playing game in a way. I
And
started
yeah,
making characters.
I actually wound up with mine that kind of a pick and choose thing that when I was doing rituals, I would pick the god image that seemed most appropriate to that, regardless of which pantheon. So I didn't really have a problem with mixing gods from different pantheons, if they were attributed with control over specific areas.
Yeah,
To
and
an
I
extent,
still
that's encouraged.
yeah, and I still called on Thor to control the rain.
Yeah.
Um, I was able to pray to Thor and make the rains go from a rain to a mist.
Well, all else
Yeah,
aside, I tended to default to the Norse just because I've got Scandinavian heritage.
Oh,
yeah,
But
don't go
it
that way. You might become a focused.
well, in one instance, I was needing to do a ritual on a car. So in that instance, I thought it was most appropriate to call on Primus, the god of the Transformers.
there you go.
So my
There you
my
go, dude.
question, my question, or something that's always milled around in the back of my head when talking and interacting with pagans, because I follow a couple on Twitter. I've met Ocean. I follow um, Orla, and um, wow, her name just totally vacated my brain. The Red
I
Witch
do
one.
that.
She's always got a red witch.
Callan.
Yeah, Catelyn. There we go. Name
Yep.
just vacated my brain. Um, the thing that always strikes me is that the pagans that I've interacted with and the pagans that I've seen, they always worship a god that's gods that are known, like like the main Norse and the Egyptian and the Roman and the Sumerian and all that. My thought would be, wouldn't somebody have an experience with a god that's not well known? That
Yeah.
like somebody like let's just. I'm sorry, I'm yelling and my boyfriend's yelling at me for it.
Well, I had eventually settled on, kind of a personal understanding that they really were all the same gods being called by different names in different cultures.
Yeah, I went through a phase like
You
that
know,
too.
and
Hmm.
I I came to the idea of viewing God as like this enormous gemstone with like a million facets.
Hmm.
And
Well,
wherever you were standing, you could probably only see three or four facets.
right,
And every person thought that that three or four they saw that was the total of God,
mhm.
not realizing there were like a million other facets that they weren't seeing.
Right, but what I'm saying
Interesting.
is let's just say, for example, that somebody is a trash collector. That's their job, right? And there is a lesser known Aztec god of the midden heat. Just as an example, because this is the easiest thing that came to my mind, and I don't mean any disrespect.
I actually have an answer for this.
Okay, let me finish the question, and then so that everybody gets the full context. Why would that person not be contacted by that minor god and then be like, "Oh, I've never heard of this god," and then do research and then be like, "Oh, it exists." I had a uh, personal experience with Midon, whatever. I can't think of anything. And then they go and they actually find that that god existed, but they had no pre-existing knowledge of them.
Okay, it's because you need to build up a personal relationship with them, right? And you can't meet you 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 can't build up a personal relationship with someone you haven't met. And if you're meeting them through other people's words and what you research, and then you start to feed them your energy and connect with them, and then you start developing your own experiences.
Mm. Okay, so maybe I misunderstood something along the way because I always felt like I was called by this god.
Yeah, they have to give a certain amount of effort before they'll start having those experiences. It's like you're not automatically going to be friends with someone you've never met before.
Right. I understand that. I understand that idea, but also the idea that what I'm trying to express is that if meeting them through a way that doesn't require somebody else, like, I can walk down the street and I can bump into a random person and he can be like, "Hey, hi, my name's Mike," and I'm like, "Hey, my name is blah," and then we start a relationship because we've bumped into each other. That was the kind of the thought that I was going for. Is like, why is it that somebody who's pagan has never had and it never felt like they were drawn to a god that they didn't actually know already existed as
Or
a concept.
maybe because they don't claim that their God knows everything and everyone, like Christianity.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
See, I just have one curiosity. I'm wondering if everyone else is thinking that purple worships the many-faced god from Bravos.
I didn't hear the end of that, Bub. What?
Do you worship the many-faced god from Bravos?
I don't know what that is.
Placing Game of Thrones, the many-faced god is basically all the gods rolled into.
Okay, I never watched Game of Thrones, so I don't get the reference.
Oh,
Yeah, I haven't watched past season 1, but I own the first 4.
I can't watch Game of Thrones. Just can't.
Yeah, even before it started, I decided it was something that I didn't think I wanted to watch. Mostly because it was so overhyped before they even started it, and my experience has shown me that anything they hype that heavily is because they think they've got to make their money back in the opening weekend before anybody reviews it.
So you can't like it because it's popular.
Well, no.
I'm just giving you.
Yeah, no, it was that they were pretending it was popular before anyone had ever seen it.
It actually was, because I remember back when the series first started, I was involved in a game in an MMO that I play, and quite a few people were like, "Oh, did you hear they're making a TV series out of the Fire and Ice books?" Like multiple people had read the book series at the very least.
The problem is that it only has like 5 series worth of book material, and then they started to go off from the books, and then the story just declined horribly after that.
Right. I've heard that happens a lot with animes based on mangas, where the anime catches up to the manga, and then goes off on its own tangent, but eventually it re-meets up with the manga later on. But of course, they don't want to wait that long for that to happen with a book series, especially when the author can't give them a date when they're going to actually release the books.
It's funny that you think George R. R. Martin worked with something as trivial as these. He
I'm sorry,
might
what?
get George R. R. Martin, the guy who wrote The Song of Ice and Fire. It's funny you think that he worked with days. He might give a year that the book might be out, maybe. Probably.
Right. That's what I was saying. Like, he's given no timeline for the rest of the books, and the TV producers can't wait for him to decide to get around to it.
Yeah, well, that was part of the problem they ran into with the Harry Potter movies. Was they started filming them before she finished the last book, so then kind of the pressure of the deadlines and that got to be too much for her.
Mummy, I can't hear you.
Dead
Okay,
silence.
who's needing to talk now?
I don't
guess-
know.
I
I
think.
just got back, and this is what I came back to.
Okay, yeah, I think that was Orla having people in the background.
Yeah, I think that was another of Orla's spawn.
Have no
But
regrets.
can you kind of... Well,
He says he has no regrets. He knows exactly what he did while I was doing something else on my phone and couldn't mute it.
I kind of wondered about that because you are into horror.
And that's my eldest, the one that does the raptor scream that I post sometimes in Discord.
Okay, I need to step away from a minute. I've got you on speaker so I can hear, but I won't have my microphone.
Yeah, when you get back, I'll show you what my shuttles look like. So that, yeah, because I tried playing, like, Elmer's extremely picky about the toys that he plays with, and he really prefers Mommy's crafting toys to his own.
I've found no reason to buy cat toys. I find that they prefer random garbage like toilet paper tubes and wads of paper.
that's the same with ferrets. Like, we've bought a bunch of different toys for our ferrets, and there's only one thing that they'll would play with, and that was a chaser toy. Otherwise, it's like, what did you buy this for?
Yeah, he likes stuff on string and poles, like the stuff that you whip around. Like, he loves those kind of things.
Well,
That is
Sammyson-
the only kind of toy he likes that doesn't include Mom's craft stuff.
Yeah, Sammyson's not much one to play with toys at all, and I'm afraid that's because he had had the chance to be an outside cat and used to hunt live things. So, just toys bore him.
Yeah, toys bore Frank a bit too. He wasn't an outside cat, but the first group of people that owned him were hoarders. There's really no other way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
And they lived in a rural-ish kind of area in the city I live in. And he used to kill field mice. Not sure how he did it, because he had his front paws declawed, but he would.
Mummy's obviously not a stranger to the dark.
What's that?
It sounded like he said, "Mom's obviously not a stranger to the dark."
Wild Orla spawn.
He's having some fun.
Yeah, Frank would have fun when he had field mice to kill, but we don't have field mice where I live, so at least not in my neighborhood. So, and anything else he would probably kill is much larger than he is, so without his front claws, he has no chance.
Does he have a treat that he likes? Like something that you give him that he absolutely loves to eat?
I can't remember the name of the cat treat, but he likes it. His teeth are getting soft though, so you have to break it up into smaller pieces.
Have you ever? So does he react to it very strongly? Like he sees it and smells it, and he just
Oh, no.
absolutely wants it. Okay, never mind then. My doesn't work.
Yeah, because I have little things that are shaped like a mouse, where I put food in sometimes for him, because he prefers to hunt before he eats. Like even if I'm not awake, he still kind of prefers it, because there have been times where I've woken up and realized that he hasn't eaten and he'll be bugging me to like play with him before he'll eat, even though it's very obvious that he's hungry. And so I have like little mice that if he hits them a certain way or plays with them a certain way, they drop treats. And he just adores that. He will play with those. Like, I put them in different areas. I change where I put them so that he can go hunting for them. Because the ritual for him, if I'm awake, is literally snuggle, then play with me, then now it's time to eat. If it happens out of order, he is extremely upset.
Yeah, that's why I was asking, because I had a dog that she was a woofer. Like, you put a bowl of food in front of her and it was gone in 15 seconds, which is not a good thing. But she loved Kongs and she would play with her Kong. And so what we would do is we would stuff the Kong full of food and give it to her. And the act of moving the Kong around to get the food to fall out, it was enrichment, but it encouraged her to eat slower. And so what I was going to say was maybe you could find some way to incorporate their food, like Try's talking about, where they have to kind of hunt something to get the food out rather than just having the food there.
Well, Frank doesn't have a issue with eating food. He eats just fine. It's just he doesn't play.
Well, right, but it's the encouraging him to imitate playing and being active in order to get his food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Jackson Galaxy point out for cats and probably for dogs as well that their standard pattern in the wild is hunt, kill, eat, sleep, and then repeat that as often as necessary. So basically, if you play them out and then they eat, they'll usually go to sleep right after that.
Yeah, he's definitely sleeping right now. He's been playing for a while. I opened up the window for him, and he's been yelling at the bird. He had been yelling at the birds before I came on stream. So he's like, "I'm done. I did my playtime. Now I'm gonna sleep."
Yeah. Well, Samuelson doesn't play very much, but then often at night, usually around like midnight, 1 a.m., he gets all squirrely and he starts running full speed back and forth and crashing into things and jumping up on top of the refrigerator and all that stuff.
Elmer tries to get up to the shelf that's over my bed at about 1 a.m. every night. And unfortunately, the way my room is set up, sometimes when he misses that shelf, because he really hasn't figured out how to reach it yet, he'll fall on my face. So that's really fun to wake up to. And then he's like, "Oh, you're awake now. It's snuggle time. Let me use my murder mittens to make biscuits on your neck. Hopefully I don't hit your windpipe. Oh, wait, I'm sorry, I hit your windpipe. You don't need to live, do you?
See, I'm lucky in that midnight thing, in that when it's time for me to go to bed, I just put my pets back in their cage because they're ferrets.
Yeah.
But we've had a couple of instances where the cage hasn't gotten closed right.
Oh no.
And so she got, like, 1 or 2 times she's gotten out and she's managed to squeeze under the door because we've got that air gap under the door. And so one night I woke up and I heard the sound and I kind of sat up in bed and I looked around and then there's this dark shape moving across the wall next to me, and I screamed, jumped up and turned off the light, and my ferret was just standing there looking at me like, "What's your problem, lady?" But she's a little escape artist. We used to have a setup where basically what we do is we've got plastic sheeting being held into the place by the door with a baby gate on the outside. And we accidentally lent the hamper too close. So she was able to climb up onto the hamper, reach over the plastic, and get out of the area that she had been quarantined into while he was going to pick me up from work. So we come home and there's a ferret sitting in the middle of the living room.
Aw. My little cat is a little bit of an escape artist, as well. I have to keep him out of certain portions of the house, and he knows when he is allowed to be out in the out in other out of my room and when he's not. He's gotten used to the routine, and he'll wait until I am tired and wait until I open the door the right way, and I'll look into the room to see if he's anywhere near the door. He's figured out that if he can take a running leap from the bed, he'll get like really, really close to the door, and then he can scoot out the rest of the way. And I swear it is totally wrong for him to have the powers of Houdini and the Flash together. No cat should be allowed to have those powers. Because all I see when I open up the door in those instances is he's black and white normally. All I see is like a gray streak going by. He's like, haha, fooled you. Now you have to catch me.
Yep, I know what you mean about just seeing the streak.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing physical there. There's just in the peripheral some kind of colored shadow.
Yep.
But
And he's learned the times of night when he's not supposed to. He's actually made it into, because even when he was allowed full access to most of the house, he's never been allowed in my dad's room. And he's timed it to where my dad and I open our door at the same time, he will make it into my dad's room. And that is one of the 3 areas of the house he's really not allowed in. And I've had to cut him off from. He's allowed back in the living room now, but he's still not allowed in the kitchen. I think there's somebody in the back. There's a cat in the backyard that's been like aggravating him, and I cannot get rid of that cat. And I don't mean get rid of in a hurtful way, but I just like when cats in this neighborhood decide that that's part of their turf, they just stay.
Turf wars.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a little hesitant to go on this because a lot of people think it's really weird, but what is actually very effective for cats and dogs is scent marking.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was having a problem with that in St. Paul, that we were having neighbors' cats coming into our yard and upsetting our dog and cats, of actually peeing into a bottle and going and squirting it out along the posts in the corner of the yard. And basically, as long as I refreshed the scent after a rainfall, we did not have the stray cats coming in our yard anymore.
Yeah.
That does sound weird, but it's one of the few things I haven't tried. Because obviously, I love cats. I'm not going to do anything that's inhumane or like or harmful to try to get them out of my yard.
Yeah. Well, that's it. I didn't want to injure any of the neighbors' cats, but I wanted to keep them out of there.
Yeah. And And also, even if we got rid of that cat, my cat likes eating the paint off of the back of the door on in the kitchen as well. So
Oh, that
unless I
can't be
can
good.
bar that off, he's not allowed in there. I finally figured out how to do it for the living room, but the kitchen setup is a little bit different. It's been a little bit harder to kind of do.
Yeah.
So
See, my problem is I feel sorry about Sammy being enclosed in the apartment. So I'm afraid of him getting bored. So I want to try to have something, ways for him to exercise and hopefully something, for a bit of mental stimulation.
yeah,
And he's
something
not
I
much
wound up
interested in the toys, so I having trouble finding things I can do for him.
something I wound up doing was I have my window set up to where he can't get out of it. Um, I took one of those shelves that's like plastic bars instead of like an actual like solid shelf,
Hmm.
and I actually had a friend help me cut out a size that would fit into my window, and we stuck it into my window. So basically, like I can punch out that in an emergency. I can punch out those bars myself if I need to get out. Because Elmer tried to open the screen
Yeah.
the first time I tried to open the window, and that is a punch out screen. So he would have been able to do it, but I have like, and basically it opens up the window for him, but it also keeps him from being able to get out, and that helps a lot at night. Um, because at night, um, he will try. If I don't watch him, he's figured out that if he pushes on the barriers when I'm not watching, he can get to the parts of the house that he's not allowed in.
Hmm.
Um, and so like I can't keep the the barriers up while I'm asleep. And also they make it hard for my sister to get around the house as well. So there are times of day where he routinely is allowed out into the rest of the house, and there are times where unfortunately I have to keep him in my room.
Yeah, with Sammy, I don't have a problem with him. Basically, he'll respect any barriers, so the window screens are fine. And, I take him over to Sloth Girls to, visit over there. And we just put a baby gate across the door. And I mean, that thing's only like 2.5 feet tall, and he can jump up onto the kitchen counter. So I know he could easily clear that. But, he just acknowledges the boundaries and he never pushes past them.
I've
Honestly, if Elmer didn't have like a suppressed immune system due to his health issues, I would actually take him outside on a leash every once in a while. But that would put him at risk of exposure of, even if I got the other cats to lay off our yard, we have stuff like raccoons and possums.
Yep.
Yeah,
So
I told my boyfriend once our leather ferret has passed away, if we decide to get a cat, it's learning about ferret cage, and that's going to be its overnight staying place. Because we have one of those, like it's like 6 feet tall, four levels. It's the kind of, like, if you go into a pet store, not like a Petco or one of them, but if you go into one, they've got them in a gray cage with 4 levels. It's basically
Hmm.
that big. And I said we're going to cage train it on that, so that, like, that's its room, where it sleeps. But of course, we'll keep the door open when we're home, and it can come and go as it likes. But like when we go to work, it's going to go in there, because we do live in an apartment complex where maintenance could come in at any time without warning, and then we have a loose cat. So
yeah, our with my situation with Elmer, I've had to train him certain things. I've never gotten him broken of trying to bury his food. And I wouldn't mind if he scratched the floor like a couple of times and then just left it. But if he is mad enough, he will pull clean laundry down out of my laundry bin and like cover his food with it.
Yeah.
And so I've got him trained to like once he's done with his food, I haven't got him to stop like scratching, but once he's done with his food, he jumps up on my bed and gets pets and cuddles and treats for jumping on the bed. I just need to figure out how to keep him from scratching to bury his food in the first place. It's not as bad now that I have a distraction, but that's one of the things that I'm trying to get rid of him doing.
Well, I would definitely recommend that do a search for Jackson Galaxy. I think his YouTube channel is Cat Mojo.
Yeah, I'm familiar with him. I haven't looked into anything he's done recently, but my mom used to love his show on Animal Planet.
Yeah, but I mean, if you've got a specific question like that, I'm sure you can probably find somewhere that he's covered it, and
Is that
would probably have
cat
some
whisperer
ideas.
guy?
What's that?
Is that the cat whisperer guy you're talking about? I don't know.
Yeah, that's his show on Animal Planet was My Cat from Hell.
Oh,
Yeah.
So I'm gonna cut it off. I gotta get working on tomorrow's video, and that's
Okay,
gonna
well,
take a while. Because,
thanks for coming in.
It's probably what I should be doing, but
well, we
Hi,
have been
Bob.
going for 3 hours. Is it time to wind this down?
Up to y'all.
Oh, Bub ran away a little too quick. I'm sure he had something he needed to plug. He's the only one of us who puts out videos on a regular basis. Well, Tria, you've been doing a lot more lately.
Yeah, it's partially because I have a lot that I want to get done, and I have actual deadlines, not ones that I've formed in my head. Because apparently, when I form a deadline, I know I'm full of bullshit, and so just like it's like I know her, she's full of shit. She's I can procrastinate till like
Okay,
2 days.
and Critical
before the
Cripple
thing.
is mentioning that DPR is going to have Telltale on shortly here. So maybe we should just wrap this up here.
Yeah.
So Tria, do you have something you'll be putting out soon?
I have lots of things I'm going to be putting out soon. This is an extremely busy month for me, and in a good way. If you have not seen my latest live stream and you can handle it, please go watch it. It's important. I talked about Mormon culture and how it leads to sexual abuse. And there are actually, and I took a Mormon standpoint on it because I come from that particular religion. But in the links in that Google Doc are actually groups that are trying to get laws changed so that there aren't religious exemptions for clergy when abuse happens. So please, even if you don't watch the video, please go research some of the groups that I put down there. This upcoming weekend, I have a live stream. It's basically a celebration live stream and a hangout to celebrate 1 year of having left the Mormon Church officially. Not sure what I'm going to do for it yet, taking suggestions. But it's basically a big celebration. Then October 20th through the 26th, I have at least 3 live streams that are going to happen, possibly 4, for Ace Awareness Week. On Monday, the 21st, I have a Kinky Aces stream where I get a few Kinky Aces online to talk about what it's like to be asexual and in the BDSM community. I'm going to talk about sex repulsion one night, and I'm going to talk about medicalization of asexuality, specifically hyposexuality disorder. And then that Thursday on the 17th, I am inviting a bunch of aces on to talk about asexuality as individuals, because being on the ace spectrum can mean mean different things to different people and manifest in different ways. So I kind of want to talk about those things. And eventually, I'm going to either do a live stream or a edited video on the difference between being excommunicated in the Mormon Church and resigning from the Mormon Church, because the experiences are a little bit different. So I will have a schedule up eventually at some point,
Okay.
probably before the end of the weekend, but keep an eye
Couple
out
of
for all that
things.
stuff.
As far as the aces and BDSM, I hope you've mentioned that to Silver.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've told Silver about it, but like I don't think she's processed it, so I'm probably gonna drop her like a DM saying, "Hey, I'm doing
Yeah.
this on X night." Um, so
Also,
far, oh, go ahead.
the thing you mentioned about the clergy not having an exemption as far as the child sexual abuse. It's too bad that Bub dropped out before you mentioned that, because that's certainly something he's on about a lot.
Yeah. The thing is that I do know that there was basically what it is Sam Young has started a coalition because he started his movement within the Mormon Church, and then they excommunicated him. And he decided after a while that he would probably get more changes done in the church if we created laws that actually cause churches to actually have to be accountable for the things that they do, because basically that's what it is churches are not held accountable. um and so he's working with lawyer groups, he's working with uh religious groups, um he's working with essentially what looks like to be a lobby group as well, trying to get changes made. And there's like 15 different organizations in his coalition that he's got. He's got two rules. One of them is you have to be willing to work with basically anybody who is on board. Essentially, you can't be like, well, I'm not going to work with anybody who's Jehovah Witness, or I'm not going to work with anybody who's Christian. Like, he he is still Christian himself, but he doesn't care what your personal beliefs are as long as they're not harmful. And the other thing is that he will not accept anybody in his coalition that is not LGBTQ plus friendly. Um, there were some Catholic organizations that wanted to join, and they were denied because he said, "Well, you have to be willing and accepting, not just tolerant, but accepting of LGBTQ plus people, because my ex-Mormon family is LGBTQ plus, and basically you have to play nice with them, and you cannot teach anti-LGBTQ plus rhetoric.
Yep.
If I find that you're not welcome in this coalition."
Okay,
So
and on the subject of the LGBTQ plus, for anyone who isn't aware of it, this Friday, October 11th, is National Coming Out Day, which is basically just a day where people are encouraged to, take the next step in, coming out to a friend or family or someone, not to push it for people that you don't think won't take it well, but just to take that one extra step to be a little more public
yep,
about it.
be careful, be safe. If you don't think you're going to be safe doing it, don't feel
Don't do it.
obligated.
Yep. Well, that's why I'm saying don't push it with family if you know they're not likely to accept it.
And make sure that even if you think you have people who are going to accept it, sometimes they can surprise you and not react the way you expected. Make sure you have somebody
Support.
to fall back on if you need it, because coming out can be difficult.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Well, unless somebody has something more to add, I think I'd like to close it down here.
Alrighty.
Okay, so we're going offline. So catch y'all later.
Have a good day.
Bye.
TTFN.